Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts, starting from creating the Lord of the Rings. Chapter 61. Although she had no substantial relationship with Artel, she still felt unhappy at this time, so she pouted, showing a lack of interest. At this point she didn't want to watch any Quidditch anymore, she just wanted to leave quickly, so she tugged at Artel's sleeve. Artel, this place is too high, I don't want to see it, why don't we go for a walk around the Black Lake? There is a lawn on the edge of the Black Lake, with fresh air and a wide view. Many wizards like to chat or walk there. Okay, Artel wasn't interested in Quidditch, he was out to relax anyway, whatever. Then let's leave first, bye. Artel said goodbye to Sister Pottle, and Hermione pulled Artel's sleeve, showing an apologetic smile to Sister Pottle, and then pulled Artel out of the audience. Sister Pottle didn't notice Hermione's thoughts, she just felt sorry, but said goodbye politely. After leaving the audience, Hermione's mood improved a lot. The two walked towards the Black Lake, a gust of wind blew from the lake, and Hermione's hair fluttered with the wind, with a fresh smell. Artel is enjoying the tranquility of the moment. Sunshine, lake, grass, Hermione, wind. The atmosphere of silence did not last long. Hermione suddenly reached out and touched the leaf earrings on her ears, looked at Artel, and suddenly asked, Artel, do you have any new magic to teach me? New magic, there is one. Artel thought about it and thought of a suitable magic. Is it not in the book? Of course, what's in the book is interesting. That's also in that witchcraft notebook called Saruman. Hermione thought of the thorns entanglement that Artel had taught her last time, a different kind of magic than the mainstream witchcraft in the wizarding world today, but it worked well. Well, it's a defensive type of magic called Light Shield Curse. It can defend against most black magic and evil spells. If the magic power is strong, it can even resist the Unforgivable Curse, which is much more powerful than the Iron Armor Curse. Artel introduced to Hermione, and the two came to the edge of the Black Lake, found a grassy slope that was almost clean, and sat on the ground facing the Black Lake. Then Artel took out his wand and swiped at his side. Hundreds of evils do not invade. The Light Shield spell is one of the more powerful defensive spells of the Holy Light system. After the system was transformed into a spell that was more suitable for this world, the spell became invulnerable to all evils. With Artel's casting movements and spells, a layer of white shimmer appeared around Artel's body, not dazzling, with a peaceful and holy feeling. Try to cast a simple spell on me, Artel said to Hermione. Hermione thought for a moment, then took out her wand and tapped at Artel. Stop stiff legs. Hermione released a leg-locking spell, which is a relatively simple primary spell that can be learned from the Encyclopedia of Spells. A ray of light flew from Hermione's wand, and the moment it hit the white light around Artel, it went out like the light of a candle. And Hermione screamed, and then her face became strange. But as the leaves on her ears flashed an emerald green light, Hermione's face returned to rosy at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Light Shield Curse can devour the attacking magic spell, and at the same time devour part of the spirit power of the caster. In simple terms, releasing an attacking magic spell on the Light Shield Curse will consume additional spirit power. With a wave of Artel's wand, the white light around his body disappeared. If your magic power is only enough to cast a spell once, and you hit the Light Shield spell, you will immediately pass out because your mental power is swallowed up. What a strong protective spell, Hermione murmured, her eyes lit up, looking at Artel with a hint of admiration. This spell is so powerful, it must be difficult, right? You have already mastered it. No wonder Professor Flitwick said that you are the most talented wizard he has ever seen. You should be able to learn it quickly, but it's limited to magic power. It shouldn't be able to protect against too strong magic spells, but the magic spell itself has extra protection against black magic, so it's okay. Artel held up his wand and made an arc in midair. When chanting the mantra, you need to cooperate with gestures, and the cooperation of spiritual power must. Hermione is not only a scholar, but also a scholar who loves to learn. For the next hour or so, Artel sat in front of the Black Lake, watching Hermione practice the spell over and over again. Because of the Moonlight Oak leaf earrings, Hermione's mental energy is relatively abundant, and even if it is consumed, it will be quickly replenished. Unlike the complex healing spells like Aria of Light, the protective spells were much simpler. Hermione had already mastered them in more than an hour, and she could successfully cast the spell 5 times or so. Although Hermione released the light shield spell, the white light around her body could hardly be seen in the daylight, but it was not weak. Artel tried to control the magic power and cast a petrification spell on her, but it was successfully blocked, and it also triggered the effect, which devoured part of Artel's mental power. Hermione, who had achieved results, was even happier and continued to practice with enthusiasm. Artel was blowing the wind, watching Hermione and the golden ripples of fish scales on the lake, with an indescribable satisfaction in his heart. According to normal development, Harry's actual combat ability is the strongest in the Iron Triangle, especially after the creation of Dumbledore's army. Although Hermione is very talented, she is not as good as Harry in combat. But now with Artel, everything is different. If nothing else, at least it's okay to hang Harry. In particular, Artel's spells are not originally in this world, which also means that no one has seen these spells before, and there will be an unexpected effect after they are used. Just thinking about it, Hermione walked over to Artel and sat down, rubbed her sore wrist, and complained excitedly. It's just too difficult. I can't release it perfectly. Even if I'm fully prepared, the success rate is only 1/3. If it's a battle, or in a hurry, it's very likely that the release will fail. Then it's up to you to practice slowly. Magic spells are different from reading books. They need a lot of practice, and they also need to conduct actual combat drills, so that they can better master the magic spell. Artel reached out and wiped the sweat from Hermione's brow. Hermione's breathing was a little short, but she didn't say anything. I think you can try to sign up for Professor Flitwick's fighting club next year. It should be of great help to you, and also, practice polymorphism a lot. Polymorphism plays a far more important role in combat than you think. Big. At the level of the dean, the headmaster, he uses polymorphism a lot in duels. After hearing Artel's words, Hermione nodded thoughtfully. I understand. In addition to reading books, I will spend part of my time practicing magic spells. Hermione clenched her fists and made a cheering gesture. Artel let out a laugh, folded his hands behind his head, and lay down on the lawn. Hermione followed suit and lay down. The two of them didn't speak. Apart from the wind, they seemed to be able to hear each other's breathing, which made Hermione's heart beat faster. After a while, the sun was about to set. The wind on the lake turned a little gloomy, and Artel sat up, looked at Hermione, and found that she was asleep. After practicing the light shield spell for nearly 2 hours, although the leaf earrings can restore her mental strength, she still feels mentally and psychologically exhausted. Seeing Hermione curled up into a sleeping ball, Artel reached out and squeezed her cheek. Well, Hermione stretched as if stretching, then opened her eyes, saw Artel looking at her, and sat up immediately blushing. I'm a little tired, and I fell asleep unconsciously. Hermione said in a low voice, as if feeling a little embarrassed, and said angrily. But it's better than someone falling asleep reading a book. Yes, you were right, we should go back. After the sun goes down, it should be cold outside. As he spoke, Artel stood up and glanced at the Quidditch pitch, where the friendly match had long since ended and there was no one left. However, there are many senior wizard couples on the edge of the Black Lake, and young wizards like Artel and Hermione are more eye-catching. Well, I do feel a little cold when you say that. I want a meringue cream of mushroom soup for dinner today. I used to be at home and my mother would make it for me when it was cold in winter. Hermione stood up, took out her wand and released a cleanup on herself and Artel, clearing the weeds and dust off the two of them, before returning to the castle with Artel. Before the two entered the castle, they saw Harry and Ron, who had just left Filch's office after confinement. They were disgraced and looked exhausted. Hermione only found out after asking a question. It turned out that the two had been punished by Snape to clean up the prefect's bathroom and the vegetable warehouse. After the double destruction of the spirit, he was able to leave. Now the two were hungry and tired. After talking to Hermione a few words, they said hello to Artel, and hurried to the auditorium to prepare for dinner. It must be Snape. He's taking revenge on us for sabotaging his plans yesterday. Look, I'll find a way to stop him. When they parted, Artel heard that Harry was still analyzing the possibility of Snape stealing the Philosopher's Stone with Ron. Poor Harry. Artel shook his head. Hermione thought Artel was talking about Harry and Ron being punished, and snorted. They deserve it. The two of them have already deducted 2% from Gryffindor. If it weren't for them, our academy wouldn't be negative. Hermione had now added back the 50 points she had deducted, so she spoke very hard. Let's go eat too, and I'll try the soup you mentioned. During dinner, Artel saw Dumbledore in the professor's chair, and he didn't know whether he came back by himself after finishing his work, or was called back by Snape and the others because of something strange in the castle. Asterisk. Dumbledore still looks like an ancient well, and it seems that the recent events at Hogwarts can't affect his mood. With a kind smile on his old face, he ate dinner gracefully, while looking at the students in the auditorium kindly. As if feeling that Artel was looking at him, Dumbledore turned his eyes slightly, looked at Artel, smiled and nodded at him. Artel responded politely. What a good boy. Dumbledore couldn't help but sighed. Hearing that, Professor McGonagall, who was beside him, raised his head and smiled when he saw that Dumbledore was looking at Artel. Yes, Artel is a kind and polite boy, and his talent is the best I've seen in years. I think he will far surpass me in transfiguration in the future, but, Dumbledore, this kid's talent for black magic is even more remarkable. Professor McGonagall looked worried. I've always been against putting him in Slytherin. You know, children are affected by their surroundings as they grow up. And his family is like that. If Artel turns out to be like that guy, I think, it's not just a loss for the wizarding world, it's a disaster. Professor McGonagall has great hopes for Artel's future. In her opinion, Artel's future achievements will not be inferior to Dumbledore. Because his talent is really too strong, so strong that Professor McGonagall feels fear. Once Artel becomes a dark wizard, I am afraid that he will become a more dangerous existence than Grindelwald and Voldemort. Don't worry, Minerva, Artel's mind is firm and won't be easily influenced. He will become a wizard like Merlin in the future, as he said, whether it is Slytherin or Gryffindor, in fact, it's all part of Hogwarts. Dumbledore wasn't worried about that. Artel's eyes are pure, his heart is kind, and he is fundamentally different from Voldemort, and this child can enter Slytherin in large part because he has those qualities that Slytherin himself admires. Smart, resourceful, determined, and disregarding certain laws and regulations. It was as if Artel had blocked Pansy, who was also a Slytherin, on the first day of his arrival, but he was doing it for Hermione, who was his companion. All in all, Dumbledore had a fondness and admiration for Artel, but was definitely not defensive. Professor McGonagall was more worried about Artel. As Artel's transfiguration professor and the person who brought Artel to buy a wand herself, she knew how terrifying Artel's talent was. He can master any metamorphosis in a very short period of time, and quickly reach the extreme. You must know that transfiguration plays a major role in high-level wizards in battle, and Artel's talent in black magic is unmatched, which means that Artel will have a daunting fighting ability in the future. He won't let you down. Dumbledore knew what Professor McGonagall was worried about, and smiled comfortingly. If Artel was in Gryffindor, I wouldn't be worried. Professor McGonagall grumbled. Snape on the other side put down his knife and fork and gave her a cold look. I think I'll educate Artel, Professor McGonagall, maybe you forgot, Gryffindor has notorious Death Eaters too. Professor McGonagall opened his mouth, but in the end said nothing. She knew that Snape was talking about Sirius, the man still imprisoned in Azkaban, and it was because of his betrayal that the Potters had an accident. This incident was a pain in Snape's heart forever. Seeing that Professor McGonagall was silent, Snape snorted softly, and Sunere turned his face to the other side. Okay, Minerva, I don't think the focus right now is on these kids, it's going to be at least a few years before Artel grows up, and what we're trying to do is give kids a carefree environment to grow up in. Quote. Dumbledore clapped his hands lightly, attracting the attention of McGonagall and Snape, then lowered his voice. When the students see us eating here, their nervousness will be effectively relieved, but I still have some things that are not suitable for me to tell you here. Come to my office for the two of you later. After Dumbledore finished speaking, he glanced at Quirrell, who was drowning in food, and got up and left. And Mag and Snape stopped talking, hurriedly ate a few mouthfuls of food, and left one after the other. After Dumbledore left, Artel and Hermione also finished their meal. After chatting for a while, they said goodnight to each other and then parted. After Artel returned to the bedroom, he took out the Iselspar on the bed. He wanted to see what Dumbledore knew, and he always felt that the old man seemed to have some key things in his hands. The ripples spread out on the crystal stone, and a scene of Dumbledore's office appeared. Snape and Professor McGonagall sat opposite Dumbledore, and the three were talking. Newt told me that the monster named Troll has lived for at least 100 years. They have no blood relationship with trolls. In addition, from some of their characteristics, they should live in tropical rainforest areas. But no one has found it yet. Newt plans to take the time to go to the rainforest and look around and see if he can find anything. Dumbledore took a sip of hot tea and added, "Of course, there is one more important thing. Remember the guy who suddenly appeared in Azkaban that was reported in the Daily Prophet the other day? I went to the Ministry of Magic today and unfortunately he's crazy, but I learned something through legilimency." Dumbledore was silent for a moment, his eyes suddenly became strange. That fellow was Gollum, a hobbit, the hobbit mentioned on Gandalf's parchment. He has lived for nearly 600 years, without the Philosopher's Stone, without the elixir of life, but relying on a terrifying ring, which Gollum has held for 500 years, and the power of the ring has enabled him to succeed, escaped death. And later, the ring was stolen by a hobbit named Baggins. Is that name familiar? Dumbledore opened the drawer and took out the parchment journal. He slid his finger on it a few times, pointed to a line of writing, and said, "That thing has a demagogic power that even I can't resist. Only Baggins with a pure mind, this strong hobbit, can hold it for a long time without being bewitched by him. But I've always believed that we can throw this thing into the Doomsday Volcano in Mordor." Dumbledore put down the parchment in his hand and looked at Snape and McGonagall in deep thought. The two did not speak, trying to digest the news brought by Dumbledore. After a long time, Snape spoke slowly. "In other words, the thing mentioned in Gandalf's diary is actually the ring, a ring that can make people immortal." "I think so, Severus, and apparently the ring has powers that we don't understand, otherwise Gandalf wouldn't have tried to destroy it, but the hobbit has gone mad and I don't to get more information." A look of pity appeared on Dumbledore's face. That poor fellow was tortured in Azkaban by that mad woman from Bellatrix who hid an old wand that he suffered before the hobbit was found by others. Dozens of Cruciatus. Professor McGonagall on the side frowned tightly, shook his head, and said, "But it's incredible, isn't it? Trolls, hobbits, Mordor, Doom. We hadn't even heard of this parchment diary before it appeared. If it were just some people and magical creatures, it would be fine. After all, they may have been hidden in places where we can't find them, but Mordor and Mount Doom, how could we have never heard of such a place?" Snape thought about it and said, "Could it be that the previous place names are different from the present? After all, judging from the age of this piece of parchment, it is likely to be something thousands of years ago, perhaps Icelandic volcanoes, Tambora volcanoes. So we need to sort it out, from the current information. Gandalf and the others did not succeed in destroying the ring, and later this ring was obtained by the hobbit named Gollum, which lived on the power of the ring for hundreds of years, until recently was stolen by another guy named Baggins. This Baggins is probably the descendant of Baggins who wants to destroy the ring." Snape said, and suddenly sneered again. "Of course, another possibility is not ruled out, that is, the information on this parchment is forged. Or, there are real and fake, Aria of Light, trolls, hobbits, etc. real existence, all to bring out that false information. It's strange, isn't it? We never heard of these, trolls, dwarves, hobbits, before this parchment, but now they're popping up like someone's sending evidence to it's the same before us." Dumbledore nodded, thinking the same as Snape. There must be someone secretly manipulating these, and he must have some ulterior motive. I suspect that the group of people hiding in the shadows of Hogwarts is them. Severus, Minerva, Hogwarts is not calm, we have to be more careful to ensure that the children are not harmed. Dumbledore looked at the two with a firm tone. "Minerva, find a chance to speak to Mrs. Peace and ask her to sort out all the old books in the library and see if there is any new parchment. In addition, tell the ghosts to check the castle again. The thing like last night must not happen again. I have to go to the Forbidden Forest to take a look. I always feel that something bad happened in the Forbidden Forest." Artel put away the Isilhedron and lay down on the bed to empty himself. The information that Dumbledore knew was not too much. The main thing was that Gollum was tortured mad by the woman Bellatrix, and his spirit might have collapsed, and even his memory was blurred. But that's okay, it aroused the interest of Dumbledore and others. The results of their own investigations are always more likely to be believed than what others tell them. In this way, the world acceptance of Gandalf and others will increase rapidly. It will be a long time before Voldemort is resurrected, just hang on. Artel fell asleep in a daze. Asterisk. On the other side, Dumbledore had already appeared outside the Forbidden Forest. Although the enchantment he left behind was intact, Dumbledore's face did not become relaxed. The closer he got to the Forbidden Forest, the more disturbed Dumbledore felt in his heart. Dumbledore walked outside the barrier and gently stretched out his hand. After a wave of water ripples, Dumbledore's body had appeared inside the barrier. The aura of darkness has become more intense. If this goes on like this, the entire Forbidden Forest will probably become a devil's den. Feeling the strong darkness around him, Dumbledore sighed. I don't know where this spider-like monster came from. If it is also related to the hidden person, then the other party is too magical. After a while, Dumbledore walked towards the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Along the way, he clearly found that the spider-like creatures had become more numerous, while some magical creatures that were seen everywhere had disappeared. And the closer you get to the depths of the Forbidden Forest, the more and more cobwebs become. At the back, there are cobwebs everywhere, and even the tops of the trees are connected by large swaths of cobwebs. Is its territory already so big? How can centaurs? Dumbledore's footsteps stopped, and he had already guessed where the unease in his heart came from. With a crackling sound, Dumbledore's body disappeared, and when he reappeared, he had already arrived at the centaur tribe. However, it was dead silent here. There was still some dried blood on the ground. Dumbledore waved his wand gently, and countless luminous mottled and messy footprints appeared on the ground. These footprints are similar to centaurs, but with scorch marks. These footprints are some centaurs escaping. Dumbledore pointed to one of the footprints, and then followed the guidance of the light footprint, and finally found the surviving centaurs in a hidden cave. The centaurs who survived were all old and weak, women and children, and all centaurs were dead. So, you were attacked by 2 men on flaming skeletal warhorses, covered in armor. Dumbledore got the answer he wanted from an older centaur. Dumbledore left after promising to find a safe new territory for the centaur tribe. Flaming skeletal warhorses, powerful armored warriors. Why are they slaughtering centaurs? It's getting more complicated. Dumbledore was clueless. Even if he is a knowledgeable great wizard, it is impossible to guess the power of the undead magic that is only available in other worlds. With Dumbledore's character, he can't think about things he doesn't understand for the time being. He has to send a letter to the Ministry of Magic, asking them to find a new habitable territory for the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest. After returning to the castle, Dumbledore went to see Snape again and told him about the Forbidden Forest before returning to the office to write to the Ministry of Magic. Snape listened to the first 2 big. Hogwarts hasn't finished a thorough investigation, and such a big thing has happened in the Forbidden Forest. A tribe as big as the centaurs had killed all the warriors. It makes people shudder to think about it. Fortunately, the school issued a ban when the spider monsters appeared before. Otherwise, any student had an accident in the Forbidden Forest. Hogwarts, I'm afraid it's closing. For the next month, Artel stopped a lot, except for refining the powerful orc potion, practicing magic with Hermione or watching the Quidditch Cup together. And Hogwarts also returned to its former calm, and nothing strange happened again, which made all professors breathe a sigh of relief. Of course, something special happened during this period. The first is the Ministry of Magic. After knowing what happened in the Forbidden Forest, Minister of Magic Fudge agreed to Dumbledore's request and found a new forest for the centaur tribe as a base. Afterwards, a team of Aurors was specially sent over, but unfortunately, they did not find anything. During this period, several Aurors ignored Dumbledore's dissuasion and tried to destroy the spider monsters in the depths of the Forbidden Forest. It was very serious. It is said that an Auror was bitten by the fangs of the corpse. Although he was successfully rescued, he could not survive the night after returning. Because of this, Amelia Burns, director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement at the Ministry of Magic, and Rufus Scrimgeour, head of the Auror's office, came to Hogwarts in person to confirm the danger of the corpse. After the level, 2 teams of Aurors were dispatched into the depths of the Forbidden Forest. The final result was unsatisfactory. Both sides were injured. The Auror suffered heavy casualties, and Shiloh's condition was not good. 2 of the 8 spiders' legs were broken, and several eyes were blinded. Finally, they hid in the underground cave. The remaining warriors did not dare to go deep into the ground easily, and in the end they had to withdraw, leaving only 2 warriors to keep guarding outside the forbidden forest. But in order to vent their anger, the warriors killed all the 8-eyed spiders in the forbidden forest, collecting thousands of pints of venom alone. Hagrid burst into tears when he heard the news, and held a memorial service for Aragog outside his cabin, with only Harry and Ron present. Dumbledore didn't tell him that Aragog was eaten because he was having fun with Shiloh. He thought it was the Aurors who killed the big spider. And this month, Harry and Ron have not been idle. They have been busy tracing the name of Nicole May, trying to find out what the 3-headed dog is guarding, and they are happily checking various kinds of things every day. Books. Hermione even thought the 2 of them were stunned. A month has passed so peacefully. Artel's system summoning authority has been updated. Asterisk. After dinner in the Great Hall, Artel went back to the bedroom. The 3 of Malfoy were chatting in the dormitory. They were discussing today's Quidditch Cup. Because Harry didn't join the Gryffindor house team, Gryffindor lost to Slytherin in today's Quidditch game. Seeing Artel coming back, Malfoy greeted him warmly. After a month of running in, the 3 little Death Eaters were no longer so afraid of Artel. "Good evening," Artel responded, returning to his bed. He cast a spell at the bedside. Malfoy and the others couldn't see what Artel was doing. System. Summon Lord of the Rings world items. Artel rested on his hands. Not too excited, he was ready to summon the garbage. Ding. Congratulations to the host. The item, Via, was successfully extracted. Ding. Congratulations to the host. The unlock rate of the Supreme Lord of the Rings has increased by 5%. Hearing the sound in his ear, Artel's body froze. Via, the Ring of Chi, Waya. Waya, the most powerful ring of Chi among the 3 elves. Although Via is not as deeply bound to the Lord of the Rings as the 9 Rings of Humanity, and can only unlock 5% of the seal of the Supreme Lord of the Rings, its own power is far from what the 9 Rings of Humanity can compare to. As Artel's thoughts moved, a gold ring set with blue gems appeared on the ring finger of his right hand. An indescribable force instantly spread through Artel's body. It even gave him the illusion that he could rival Dumbledore. Artel raised his hand and carefully observed the ring. Under the power of the system, a light curtain appeared in front of Artel. Elf Ring of Air Via. One of the 3 rings of the elf, with the rules of understanding, creation and protection, representing the power of the sky and the elements. Note 1. After wearing Waya, you can immediately and perfectly control the related element magic. Note 2. Enhance the wearer's ability to comprehend various magics, and greatly improve the wearer's ability to comprehend magic related to creation and protection. Note 3. The wearer can obtain the power of Waya, which greatly increases his own magic power. So strong. It is indeed the most powerful Chi ring among the 3 elves. Artel sighed a bit. At this stage, the Ring of Chi is very helpful to him. With the Ring of Chi, many of Artel's plans can be implemented. Creation and protection, in this world, corresponds to transfiguration and protection spells. After wearing the Ring of Chi, my comprehension of transfiguration has reached an unprecedented level. Artel originally had a strong talent for all kinds of magic including transfiguration because of Soren's necromancer talent. Now, with the ability brought by the Ring of Air, it is the first in the world in terms of transfiguration talent. Not a single one. After possessing the power of Waya, although Artel's magic power is not comparable to Dumbledore, it is not much different from other professors at Hogwarts. In the wizarding world, it is already very good. The talent in transfiguration allows him to master high-end transfiguration as soon as possible, and reach the level of Grindelwald in a short time. At that time, he will be able to change into anyone's appearance without the help of compound decoction. In that case, he can act like Gandalf or Saruman by himself. Feeling the power of the Chi ring, Artel took it back into the system space. Waya is made of fine gold and skystone by elves. It is usually more eye-catching when worn on the hand, but it is better to put it away. Summon the Lord of the Rings creatures. After calming down, Artel decided to strike while the iron was hot. Ding! Congratulations to the host, you have successfully summoned the Giant Oak. Giant Oak, that name sounds. Artel checked the system space, and sure enough, in the system's temporary character storage space, a tree man about 7 or 8 meters tall was sleeping. Sure enough, it's an Entei. Shepherd of the 100 Trees, one of the oldest races in the Lord of the Rings world, the Ent race. Entei's strength is very powerful, even more terrifying than trolls. Saruman's fortress Isengard was broken by the Ent family led by Treebeard. Keep it for now. Artel didn't think about where to put it for a while, so he just let it sleep in the system space first. Anyway, it can be stored for a month at most. Satisfied, Artel fell asleep. After class the next day, Artel secretly went to the forbidden area of the library and took all the information about transfiguration and black magic in the forbidden area without disturbing anyone. Books. After that, Artel turned on the academic master mode. Every time he made a potion in the room of responsiveness, he would bring Vera's self-taught transfiguration with him. With Wei's bonus, Artel's speed in learning transfiguration was terrifying, but within half a month, he had already mastered all the knowledge in the forbidden book. Not only that, but Artel also found a chance to infiltrate Gryffindor's bedroom and stole the Weasley twins' Marauder's map. Afterwards, the Weasley twins made a fuss for a while, but the Marauder map itself is not something that can be taken on the bright side, so this incident did not alarm the professor. After that, Artel took advantage of the weekend, took the Lord of the Rings, and went to Hogsmeade with the senior wizard. After observing the structure of the Honeyduke's candy store and the Shrieking Shack, I went back to Hogwarts along the passage under the Beating Willow. Artel plans to come back at Christmas time, so he has to feel the terrain in advance. After bringing Via, Artel has been able to perform apparition, but Hogwarts has a magic prohibition, which cannot be directly passed through apparition. Appear. But Hogsmeade is not banned. Artel can apparate there first, and then infiltrate Hogwarts through the underpass. In this way, the time came to December 19th. The Christmas holiday arrangement at Hogwarts is from December 20th to January 5th next year. Students can leave Hogwarts and go home for Christmas. Of course, they can also choose to stay at school. In the evening, the school will hold a grand Christmas dinner. The Christmas holiday is about to start, and the school has already counted the students who want to stay in school. Neither Artel nor Hermione chose to stay in school, they are going home for Christmas. But Hermione and Artel made an appointment to visit each other during the holidays. The twins Ron and Weasley also planned to go home. Only Harry chose to stay in school alone. Harry was not in a good mood all day. Artel felt that his memory was wrong. He remembered that Ron stayed at school with Harry. They opened presents together on Christmas Day. Harry also received the invisibility cloak. Now I don't know why Ron is going home. But Artel didn't get into the matter, and it had nothing to do with him anyway. In the afternoon, classes in all grades were suspended, and everyone was led by the dean and professors to change the Christmas costumes for Hogwarts Castle. With the Christmas trees and gift boxes being placed in corresponding positions, the joyful atmosphere of Christmas in the castle became stronger and stronger. The next day, the Christmas holiday officially began. There are trains departing from Hogwarts to London every day these days. Artel and Hermione felt that the first few trains were too crowded, so they planned to take the evening train back. After dinner, the two who went back and saluted met in the auditorium. Most of the students had left by train this morning and afternoon. The Great Hall was somewhat empty, only a few dozen students were chatting. Harry and Ron were sitting face to face at the Gryffindor table playing magic chess. Seeing that Ron hadn't left, Hermione asked curiously, "Ron, haven't you packed your bags yet?" Ron shrugged his shoulders and said a little depressedly, "Plans have changed. My parents are going to Romania to see my brother Charlie, where he has dragons, so I'll have to spend Christmas at school." "That's right, you can accompany Harry, and you can take the opportunity to go to the forbidden area to see if there is anything you want to check." After a brief chat, Artel glanced at his pocket watch. "It's almost time, let's go to the platform." Hermione nodded obediently and pulled up her suitcase. Artel looked at Harry and Ron and waved to them. "Goodbye and Merry Christmas." "You too, Artel, Merry Christmas." Harry and Ron answered in unison. Hermione also said goodbye to the two of them, and then left with Artel pulling their suitcases. Ron looked at their disappearing backs and muttered, "Harry, are you saying we're going to get them 26 gifts?" "I think, maybe, probably, it's needed." Harry thought for a while, and said somewhat uncertainly, "We're supposed to be friends, isn't it?" Ron leaned his chin and rolled his eyes. "Okay, let me think about it, maybe prepare some candy, just as George and the others went to the Honeydew candy store to buy a lot. After leaving the castle, Artel and Hermione came to the small platform opposite the Black Lake, where a dark red train was parked, and through the lights of the window, some little wizards could vaguely be seen sitting on it waiting for the departure. The two got into the car and found an empty box. Hermione put the salute under the seat, brushed the fine hair on her forehead, and sat next to Artel. A faint blush appeared on her face. "When are you coming to Manchester to play?" Hermione's voice reached Artel's ears, and he turned his head to find Hermione looking down, fiddling with her fingers. She might be a little embarrassed. "After Christmas, we plan to travel to Switzerland for Christmas. We will leave tomorrow night, and we will be back around the 27th. Artel had already told his two uncles about this in a letter he sent back a few days ago, so they will be traveling to Switzerland this Christmas. Of course, this is just a pretense. Artel's real destination is Liechtenstein. He intends to visit the troll tribe. If there is no problem, he will collect the materials for the powerful orc potion by the way." "That's it," Hermione pouted, her voice a little envious. "I haven't been to Switzerland yet. I heard it's beautiful there. I can take some pictures for you if you like. However, I think the best choice. I'll accompany you in the future. Anyway, there are so many interesting things in Switzerland, I can't finish it this time." Artel counted his fingers pretentiously as he muttered. Snow peaks in the Alps, an ancient city located on the banks of the Aire River, a mountain village and town surrounded by snow-capped mountains. "That's what you said. We're done. You'll have to accompany me again in the future." Hermione looked up and looked into Artel's eyes, full of anticipation. Artel smiled at her and reached out to touch her hair. Hermione was quickly defeated, snorted softly, turned her head to the other side, and continued to fiddle with her fingers uneasily. Seeing Hermione like this, Artel felt an inexplicable sense of guilt, perhaps because of the memory of his previous life. He always subconsciously forgot that Hermione was only 12 years old this year. "I will go to Manchester to see you after I come back from Switzerland. Our family will prepare a banquet every New Year's Day to entertain some close friends and business partners. When that time comes, I will personally deliver the invitations to your house." "Well, I'll tell Mom and Dad." Hermione nodded in understanding. For the British, although New Year's Day is not as grand as Christmas, various celebrations will be held on this day. In addition to the free New Year's Eve fireworks show, there will be torch parades and music in major cities. Meetings, dance parties, etc. The Shelby family will hold a celebration party at Shelby Manor every New Year's Day. Nobles and businessmen who have a close relationship with the Shelby family in Birmingham are invited. Woo! With a whistle, the train swayed a bit and began to move forward slowly. The lights in the box dimmed, neither of them spoke anymore, and Hermione was silent for a while, leaning towards Artel. For more than 3 months since the school started on September 1st, Hermione seemed to have gotten used to the feeling that Artel was always by her side. Thinking of not being able to eat or even meet with Artel for the next 10 days, Hermione felt unspeakably sad. Artel didn't know that his place in Hermione's heart was very important. Of course, it actually had something to do with the One Ring. Although Artel did not unblock more power of the Lord of the Rings, but as an artifact, the Lord of the Rings has the potential to deceive people, and the power to attract others is still reflected in Artel. Hermione, as the closest person to Artel in the entire Hogwarts school, was naturally deeply influenced. But it cannot be denied that this has a lot to do with Artel's handsome appearance and the temperament he cultivated in the Shelby family since he was a child. According to Sophia, it's hard for a girl to refuse Artel. After chatting for a while, it was completely dark outside, and there was a blizzard. Fortunately, there was heating in the train compartment, so Artel and Hermione didn't feel cold. The train rattled forward. The lights in the box were getting dim, and Hermione felt a little sleepy, so she closed her eyes and leaned lightly on Artel's shoulder. "Good night," she spoke softly, like a murmur. "Good night." Artel found a more comfortable position, and Hermione moved with him, leaning on his shoulder, a hand gently tugging at the cuff of his wizarding robe. Artel turned his face sideways, looking out through the frosted car window. After a few months in the wizarding world, he was a little unfamiliar with the Muggle world. "It's impossible to have a good rest this holiday. Fortunately, I got the Ring of Air. This way, the troll tribe in Liechtenstein can easily solve the problem. The rest is, I have to go back to school on Christmas Day. After sorting out what he was going to do next, Artel also felt a little sleepy. The sound of Hermione's even breathing could be heard in his ears, and Artel didn't think about it any longer. He quietly held one of Hermione's hands, and then closed his eyes. Under the light of the box, Hermione's ears turned red. When Artel woke up, it was past 5 o'clock the next morning. To be honest, sleeping on a chair on a train is still very tiring. Normally, he and Hermione could sleep on a chair by themselves, but Artel was happy. Hermione woke up a little earlier than Artel, and when Artel opened her eyes, Hermione was sitting in the chair opposite, staring at Artel with her chin on her head. "Good morning." Artel stretched. "Good morning, the radio says we'll be in London in half an hour." Hermione turned her head away from the window, as if nothing had happened. "The train in the evening runs slower. After all, the school doesn't want these little wizards to arrive in London at 3 or 4 in the morning. That would be too frustrating. Sleeping in the car like this and waking up and arriving in London is sweet. Around 6 o'clock, I think my uncle should have been waiting for me at the station. Where's Uncle Granger?" "What time did you tell the family?" "I also told them about 6 o'clock that my father and mother should have arrived in London yesterday." "That's such a shame. I'm still thinking that if your parents don't come, I'll take you back to my house." "Ha ha ha." Looking at the slightly embarrassed Hermione, Artel laughed. "Okay, no kidding, take off your wizard robes, we'll attract onlookers when we show up at King's Cross station dressed like this." The two changed their clothes and sat in the carriage waiting for the train to arrive. When Artel's pocket watch pointed to 6 o'clock, the train arrived at King's Cross station on time. Artel and Hermione got off the train, walked out of the platform, and saw Jimmy and the Granger couple who were waiting not far away. "Hi, Artel, here we are." Jimmy also saw Artel in the crowd, and he waved his hand excitedly. "It's Hermione, and Hermione is there." The Grangers also had smiles on their faces, and took a few steps to greet them. "Daddy, Mommy, Uncle Jimmy, hello, Mr. Shelby, Mr. Granger, Mrs. Artel and Hermione greeted the three separately. "You haven't eaten yet, Mr. Granger, would you like to have breakfast together?" "Okay." Before the Grangers could respond, Hermione agreed first. She didn't want to be separated from Artel right away. "You kid." Mr. Granger smiled helplessly, and then said, "Well, after the train all night, I think they're all hungry, so please, Mr. Shelby. Don't be so polite, as I said, just call me Jimmy." Jimmy was very polite to the Grangers, and he didn't have the usual arrogance at all, and the reason was naturally because of Hermione. In Jimmy's view, a witch's parents, no matter what their status, deserve serious consideration. "There's a very famous breakfast place nearby, I used to eat it when I was in London." The Grangers came by train, but Jimmy came by car. The group got into the car and was pulled by Jimmy to a breakfast shop called Wolseley. Most Londoners work at 8 or 9 o'clock, so there are not many people who come to have breakfast at this time, only a few, either talking in a low voice, or reading the newspaper in silence. The decoration of the store is good, the traditional British style, with a classical beauty. The space is very large, and there are 2 floors above and below. Jimmy brought a few people to a seat by the window and sat down. "You must try the Eggs Benedict here, it's the most authentic I've ever had." Jimmy introduced the Grangers and snapped his fingers to call the waiter. Artel looked at the menu and ordered something. The Grangers, who are traditional British people, still value breakfast very much. After reading the menu carefully, they ordered 3 sets of full meals. Jimmy recommends Eggs Benedict, roasted tomatoes, roasted shiitake mushrooms, bacon, Cumberland sausage, hash browns and black pudding. The main course is toasted butter toast and muffins, and the drink is Earl Grey tea. Artel quite admires such an Englishman, who was born in a food desert country. Soon, their breakfast was served by the waiter. A full table looks good. Artel has been hungry all night, but his appetite has been hooked up. During dinner, the Grangers asked Hermione and Artel a lot about school. Mrs. Granger's mind was a little more subtle than that of Mr. Granger and Jimmy, and she vaguely felt that Hermione and Artel seemed to be somewhat close, but thinking that the two of them had known each other before they entered school, and they were both Muggle-born wizards, so she didn't pay attention to it. To ask After dinner, Jimmy took the Grangers to the train station. Artel said goodbye to them, and agreed to visit Manchester after Christmas. Hermione pursed her lips and her eyes were a little red when they parted, which made Artel quite embarrassed. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning when Artel got into Jimmy's car and was about to head back to Birmingham. How has the past few months been? I'm actually curious, what do you have to learn in school? Learning how to curse others. In the car, Jimmy couldn't wait to ask Artel about it. It's not bad, it can be regarded as being exposed to a new world. As for the courses, various, magic, medicine refining, planting, flying, divination. It's very different from the legendary wizard. After the witch hunt in the Middle Ages, there are endless legends and stories about wizards in Europe. Of course, most of them are evil groups. These stories also have a profound impact on generations of people. Artel briefly introduced the general situation of the wizarding world to Jimmy, and Jimmy had a basic understanding of the entire wizarding world. What is the Ministry of Magic? Wizards still have so many legal constraints. Jimmy let out a smoke ring with a depressed look on his face. He didn't expect that he would be bound by the law when he became a wizard, so he might as well be a gang member. No one can control what you want to do. A lot of plans in the family have to change now. Jimmy gave a wry smile. Originally, Shelby's executives were still waiting for Artel to succeed in his studies and lead the Shelby family back to glory, rush out of Europe, and become bigger and stronger. Look a little farther, Uncle Jimmy, the Shelby family will be at the pinnacle of this world, a pinnacle that none of you can imagine. Artel looked out the window with a faint gaze, a confident smile on his face. With the system, his future achievements are absolutely unimaginable by anyone. But I need some time. During this period, I don't want the family to do anything to affect me, so let's keep it as it is. Anyway, in Birmingham, there is no other gang that can compete with us. In fact, Artel is very clear that since some senior members of the family know that there are wizards in this world, they have put their ideas on other wizards. After all, not all wizards are completely separated from muggles. Many wizards are inextricably linked with nobles, high-level people, and elites among human beings. Artel didn't want the family to provoke some inexplicable wizard and get him into trouble. Originally, the school's professors were worried because Artel was from a gang family. If they found out that the gang family had been secretly contacting dark wizards, they would have to pay special attention to Artel. I understand, I'll talk to them. Jimmy nodded, he knew what Artel meant. Seeing Jimmy's rather heavy expression, Artel sighed and added, if the family encounters any trouble that can't be solved, you can tell me, even though I'm only in the first grade now, but for many things that the family finds troublesome, I may just wave my hand. Artel didn't say anything about it. After all, he is also a Shelby. Not only that, he will be the controller of the Shelby family in the future. Jimmy hesitated, then asked, but didn't you just say that the Ministry of Magic prohibits little wizards from using magic outside the school? If you are caught breaking the rules, you will be punished, right? The Ministry of Magic mainly relies on a magic called trace wire to limit the little wizards, but I have a way to block trace wire's induction so that the Ministry of Magic will not know. When the little wizard leaves the school, he will receive a notice on the prohibition of underage students using magic outside of school from the Ministry of Magic. This notice contains contract magic, and after the little wizard signs it, he will carry traces of silk magic. The trace wire can locate the approximate location of a little wizard, and detect whether there is magic around the little wizard. Once the little wizard is located in the Muggle world and there are traces of using magic around, the Office of Prohibition of Misuse of Magic will receive a warning from Trace Magic and send a letter warning to the little wizard. That's why Dobby used magic to frame Harry when Harry was at home on vacation. Trace wire cannot detect what magic the little wizard has cast, but can use a flashback spell to check the little wizard's wand to determine what magic he has cast, and if another wand is used, the Ministry of Magic will drop the charge as there is no evidence. Artel doesn't have any other wands, but he doesn't need them either. After wearing the Wea ring, Artel's magic power is no less than that of the Hogwarts professor. With his current knowledge in transfiguration, it is still better to block a trace. It's a breeze. Is there a way to avoid being discovered by the Ministry of Magic? Jimmy breathed a sigh of relief, the expression on his face much lighter. Hey, if that's the case, I'll naturally tell you something at home. but there shouldn't be anything to look for you. As you said, the underground in Birmingham is already surnamed Shelby. Jimmy opened the car window and flew out the remaining half of the cigarette bomb in his hand. He smiled proudly, and seemed to remember something, and said, "The plane to Switzerland is ready. We can leave tonight, but I'm curious, why do you suddenly want to go to Switzerland for Christmas this year?" "I'm going to do something in Liechtenstein, which happens to be very close to Switzerland." Artel replied, counted the time, and asked, "What time is the flight ticket at night?" "At 7 o'clock, I can be in Switzerland at more than 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock. It's still too late. Go back and pack up, I'll go see him." Jimmy knew that Artel was talking about Freddie, nodded, and made arrangements on the phone as he drove. After all, Freddie was caught, and if he wanted to go in and see him, he had to give advance notice. After a while, Jimmy hung up. "It's arranged, and the afternoon can come at any time." Artel nodded, said nothing, closed his eyes and rested. In the afternoon, Artel returned to Shelby Manor in Birmingham. After meeting his aunt and uncle at home, Artel changed into new clothes, and in the afternoon, drove to Birmingham Prison on the other side of the city. As the actual controller of the Shelby family, Freddie's living conditions are still very good. Living alone in a single room, the room is clean and tidy, and all kinds of furniture and electrical appliances are readily available. Freddie was watching TV when Artel arrived. Information about the giant bear in the north was being broadcast on TV, and Artel calculated the time. In a few days, the giant bear would disintegrate. Now all kinds of media are reporting frantically, and many Li Wang's experts are making estimates and guessing, and Freddie has his own plans for this. "I don't know how many orders have been passed from here these days." Hearing someone walk in, Freddie turned around and grinned when he saw it was Artel. "Artel, my child, I've been waiting for you for a long time." The guard who brought Artel in nodded to Freddie, turned around and closed the door without saying anything. "Freddie, you seem to be in a good mood." Artel looked at Freddie. His appearance had hardly changed. His blonde hair was neat and tidy, his eyes were dignified, and his eagle-eyed eyes were eagle-eyed. The few years in prison had no effect on him at all. Freddie was used to calling Artel a long time ago. His smile remained the same. He sat up from the sofa, tidied up his clothes, then walked to the dining table and beckoned to Artel. "Come and sit and have a meal with me." Artel took off his coat, hung it on the hanger by the door, walked to the dining table and sat down. Freddie prepared a great dinner, accompanied by a bottle of cognac. "I specially asked the warden to prepare this. Jimmy told me the other day that you would come back from that magical wizarding school today, and I knew you would definitely come back to see me." Freddie poured half a glass of brandy to himself, shook it a few times, and looked at Artel. "Tell me, what did you learn at that school? To be honest, if Michael and Jimmy hadn't swear by their family honor, I wouldn't have believed that there were wizards in this world." "Hey, the Shelbys have one wizard." Freddie drank the wine in the glass in one gulp, looked at the empty glass, and asked, "So, Artel, tell me, is this true? You are a wizard now." "It's hard to believe for a Muggle family, but it's true that the world is more complex than we realize." Artel stroked the ring of air on the ring finger of his right hand, then snapped his fingers and performed transfiguration. "What?" From the opposite side came Freddie's soft whimper. He stared at his right hand. The crystal cup in his hand had turned into a cobra, coiling around his hand, spitting at him. "This is real." Freddie grabbed the cobra's head with one hand, observed it carefully, then picked up the knife on the table, cut open the snake's skin, and picked out a snake gall. "Unbelievable." Freddie sighed, opening his mouth to swallow the gall of the snake. "I advise you better not to do this." Artel stopped him, and looking at Freddie's puzzled eyes, Artel explained. "Although I have temporarily changed it, it will return to its original state after my magic power is exhausted. This snake gall should return to a crystal shard, if it changes back in your stomach." Freddie nodded thoughtfully and threw the gall on the table. Artel snapped his fingers again, dispelled transfiguration and cast a repairing spell, and the cobra and gall were transformed back into the broken crystal cup, and then repaired as before. "Besides, there is nothing exciting." Freddie looked at the restored crystal cup, his eyes fell on Artel again, and there was a dangerous light in his eyes. "It's naturally exciting, but it will kill people." Artel cut off a piece of steak and tasted it, frowning slightly. Freddie's life is better than he imagined. This steak is made of authentic Japanese Kobe beef. It is reasonable to say that it is now prohibited to export. Although some will be smuggled out, the amount that can actually flow into Europe is not large, many. Not to mention end up in a Birmingham jail. Don't worry, you'll find out later. Artel wiped his mouth and put the knife and fork down. He wasn't here to eat. The steak was good, but it was enough to taste it. The smile on Freddy's face disappeared, and he was silent for a moment, then his expression turned gloomy. You mean Brother Hart? The Hart brothers were the main messengers who planned the assassination of Artel. They were the leaders of an underground gang in Birmingham, and they had a conflict with the Shelby family because of the protection fee. After the original incident, the Hart brothers disappeared. Artel had sworn before that he would kill these two guys himself. So if you want to see it sooner, let your people find out where they are hiding as soon as possible. Artel stood up, walked to the door and put on his coat. In addition, I told Uncle Jimmy to stop all actions related to the wizarding world, but I'm not sure if the rest of the family will listen to me, so I need you to speak. Artel turned and the two looked at each other. If you don't want the Shelby family to be destroyed, don't try to contact a wizard you are not familiar with. The other party can manipulate your mind and turn you into a puppet or an idiot who can't think. Quote, as for the future of the Shelby family, leave it to me. After Artel finished speaking, he turned around and pushed the door to leave. Freddy sat still in the chair, and after a while he filled himself with a glass of wine and drank it. Hee hee ha 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 ha. In the single room, Freddy laughed hysterically, and after a while, the phone outside the door rang. The guard in charge of guarding answered the phone, and Freddy's deep voice came from inside. Go and find me that model named Monica. I remember someone telling me the other day that she was in Birmingham, telling her that I wanted to have dinner with her, and I hope no one will come tonight disturb me. Okay, sir. The prison guard hung up the phone and left with a smile on his face. Who wouldn't be happy to get Freddy's salary for a year's salary? After Artel left the prison, he got into Jimmy's car. Let's go. They were going straight to the airport. The rest of the Shelby family was ready. They had chartered a plane, and this time it was a trip with a whole family of Shelbys. Michael and Fiore, Jimmy and Nancy, Artel's cousins, and, of course, some longtime friends of the Shelby family, the Little Razor veterans and their families. After arriving at the airport, after waiting for more than half an hour, the plane took off. After playing with his cousins for a while, Artel found a chair and closed his eyes to rest. As Artel rested, there was a lot less noise in the plane, and no one dared to disturb him, although most people did not know that Artel was a wizard, but they did know that Artel was the future controller of the Shelby family. At about 8:30, the plane landed at the airport in Geneva. Jimmy and the others have already arranged. There is a car here to take them to a hotel in the city center. After getting off the car, Artel and everyone had dinner together, and then said something to Michael and Jimmy, and went back to the room alone. Inside Liechtenstein, Artel locked the hotel room, put on the ring of air, and felt the huge magic power in his body. Artel began to try to use apparition. With a crackling sound, when Artel reappeared, he had come to an unknown mountain forest. And his appearance changed immediately, from an 11-year-old child to a tall old man with CGEB, long gray hair and long beard, and the wand in his hand also changed. It looked like a long stick. If the person in The Lord of the Rings appeared, he would definitely be able to recognize it. This is the president of the Holy White Council, the white-robed wizard Saruman. Artel took a deep breath, suppressed the discomfort caused by the first transfiguration, and then felt his body after performing transfiguration. Under the dual talent blessing of Sauron and Via, Artel's attainments in transfiguration are unparalleled, and Via's power has given him the magic power comparable to that of the dean and professors, which is enough to support him to perform complex transfiguration. Looks like a success. The corners of Artel's mouth twitched slightly, and he looked around. This should be a mountain in Liechtenstein, the exact location is unknown. His eyes passed through the mountains and forests, and saw the city with lights shining in the distance. The next moment, Artel appeared in an alley in the city. Not far away, a drunk man rubbed his eyes, muttered, and shrank to hide under the bridge hole. Looks like it's going to snow again tonight. Artel had asked Malfoy at school before, and he had specially asked for the introduction of the Ministry of Magic of each country, So after asking passers-by that this was Vaduz, the capital of Liechtenstein, he got up and went to an iron building called Self-Portrait at the statue. After casting a simple magic there, the statue sensed the power of magic, and the stone below slowly opened, and the people around were unaware of it. Artel calmly passed through the cave, with a new look before his eyes. Unlike the Ministry of Magic in London, the Ministry of Magic in Liechtenstein is relatively old, and the interior buildings are also in the architectural style of ancient Rome, because it is already night, and there are not many people in the Ministry of Magic. Artel walked over to the inquiry desk, where a woman in her 30s was sitting. "Hello, what's the matter?" The woman looked at Artel, perhaps because Saruman's appearance seemed to be a relatively powerful wizard, so this woman's attitude was very good. "I want to ask where is the biggest troll tribe around here?" Artel asked. He looked at the table and saw several newspapers of the Daily Prophet, as well as some Liechtenstein travel notices with relevant guidelines and precautions. "Troll tribe? You mean the mountain troll tribe that attacked the wizards some time ago?" The woman hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you from the International Confederation of Wizards? Or from the Troll Protection Organization?" The relationship between the Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein and the mountain troll tribe was very bad. The first president of the International Confederation of Wizards prevented them from hunting trolls and promoting the rights of trolls. Therefore, the Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein even refused to participate in the annual meeting. Wizarding Conference. Some time ago, this troll tribe attacked the wizards again. The Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein planned to eliminate them, but it was blocked by the Wizards Federation and denounced by some troll lovers. Under pressure, the operation was cancelled. But the wizards living in Liechtenstein can be said to hate trolls. "No, I have a personal feud with those stupid things, and if you can tell me their location, maybe you'll find out tomorrow morning that they're gone." "Maybe." Artel's answer made the woman's eyes light up, and she looked around and whispered, "That troll tribe is hiding in the Grouse Mountains in the Ratian Mountains. Here's the map." The woman took out a book with travel guide notes from the drawer, and turned to one page, where a map of the mountains was drawn, and there were words such as danger warnings. "But, although I really hope someone can destroy those filthy and stupid things, I still want to remind you that there are a lot of mountain trolls in that tribe. If you are alone, there may be trouble." Artel looked at the map carefully, then looked at the woman, smiled softly, and said slowly, "Thank you for the reminder, but I think I'm enough alone. Maybe tomorrow morning, you'll get some pleasant news. Oh, yes, my name is Saruman." Artel's voice was a little old, but it was inexplicably full of majesty and power. He took a deep look at the woman, turned and left the Ministry of Magic, and then used displacement to leave. The woman looked at the back of Artel's departure, and whispered, "Saruman, Saruman. Why have I never heard of it? Looks like some very powerful great wizard." When he reappeared, Artel had come to the Grouse Mountains. The air was filled with the smell of stinky socks on the troll. Artel frowned, and quickly locked his position. Troll tribes are generally in inaccessible places, so there is little chance of being discovered by muggles. Although there is a scent guide, Artel still has a lot of work to go around before coming to this mountain troll tribe. The trolls have bad brains and few natural enemies, so they don't have any sense of guarding against enemy attacks. Although there are several trolls guarding them outside the tribe, they all doze off with big sticks, and their snoring echoes in the mountains and forests. Artel looked at it, and the tribe was indeed very large. There were many caves nearby, as well as nests made of wood and hay. It was estimated that there should be hundreds of them, the number of trolls. Time to work. Artel raised the long staff in his hand, chanted a spell, and one by one summoning circles appeared beside him. Then, with the surging black mist, dozens of undead creatures hidden in the shabby black cloak appeared behind Artel. "Lich, go ahead and kill as much as you like," Artel murmured softly, and dozens of lich flew out lightly. They raised their staffs, and the undead magic fell into the tribe of mountain monsters like cannonballs. Ow! The troll's painful howl instantly resounded through the mountains and forests. Artel closed his eyes and counted silently. After he counted 100, the screams gradually disappeared. Artel opened his eyes, and the entire troll tribe was in disarray. Licks are undead creatures of the same level as Death Knights. The difference is that one is a mage and the other is a warrior. As a middle-level and high-level undead creature, it can be said that it is easy to deal with stupid mountain monsters. Artel's eyes swept across the messy battlefield. The Lich didn't take much trouble to kill the trolls, it was just that these panicked guys made a mess everywhere when they fled and resisted. Are there probably more than 400 trolls? But there are hundreds of juvenile trolls among them. If you do this, you need to find more than 100 trolls. Refining a powerful orc potion requires an adult troll heart. One heart can refine 10 bottles, excluding young monsters. The harvest this time can satisfy him to refine more than 3,000 bottles of potent orc potion. Let's talk about the rest slowly. The wizarding world is so big, and there are still quite a few troll tribes. Besides, the blood of centaurs and the primary orc potions have not been prepared. This is a big project, and there is no rush. Artel snapped his fingers, and the dozens of liches slowly dissipated. Then, hundreds of magic circles appeared on the ground. After a burst of light, rows of skeleton warriors appeared in the troll tribe. Go to work. With the movement of Artel's mind, the skeleton warriors took action, looking for targets one after another, to collect troll hearts for Artel. Fortunately, the skeleton warriors have no sense of smell, otherwise they stared at the smell of smelly socks, blood and excrement. I really don't know if they can complete the task. After about 10 minutes, all the troll hearts were collected. Artel put these things into the system space, and let a few skeleton warriors search the troll's cave, and found a lot of them from the wizards. Looted junk and gold coins. There were some precious materials inside, but not many. Artel refused to come and put them all into the system space, and then an apparition returned to the hotel in Geneva. After returning to the hotel, Artel released his transfiguration. Sophia outside the suite prepared a glass of hot milk for herself. After drinking the milk, Artel fell asleep happily. For the next few days, Artel completely forgot his identity as a wizard, and just had a good time in Switzerland as an ordinary tourist. In the past, Artel spent Christmas every year at the Birmingham Manor. This time it was his first time out. The family used to protect him, but now he is a wizard and can go anywhere he wants. The night before Christmas, Artel came to the Swiss Ministry of Magic. He prepared some Christmas gifts and postcards. After spending a few galleons, Artel rented a few international owl messengers here, and then bought 2 more recent the Daily Prophet. Sheeran left. The Liechtenstein troll tribe was destroyed, and none of the mountain trolls survived. Is it a lack of morality or a loss of humanity? The Troll Protection Organization has spoken out and demanded a thorough investigation of the Liechtenstein Ministry of Magic. Magic zoologist Newt Scamander appeals to everyone to treat this matter rationally. The Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein has announced the establishment of the annual December 20th as the Carnival of Trolls. President of the International Federation of Wizards. Artel flipped through the newspapers of the past 2 days, and couldn't help frowning because he didn't see Saruman's name on it. The witch from Liechtenstein was too naive. She deliberately revealed Saruman's name, but she didn't reveal herself. But Artel also knew that the witch was for his own good. It is not easy to think that the Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein can withstand the pressure of the International Federation of Wizards and various organizations without revealing any information about him. In fact, because of that troll tribe, the Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein has suffered a lot in recent years. Apart from the frequent occurrence of troll attacks, it is not uncommon to withdraw investment from the Malfoy family. The wizards in Liechtenstein have long wanted to kill those disgusting things. First, they have not dared to take action due to international pressure. Second, hundreds of trolls are not so easy to destroy. The mad troll went to the Muggle world, the consequences that no one could afford. So now a wizard finally appeared and completely wiped out the troll tribe. All the wizards in Liechtenstein are very grateful. If the Ministry of Magic of Liechtenstein betrayed them at this time and leaked the name of Saruman, the angry wizards will overturn the Ministry of Magic. Also, the staff of the Liechtenstein Ministry of Magic are also afraid. They also didn't know what attitude Saruman had. The other party was able to slaughter hundreds of trolls alone, and from the appearance of the scene, the so-called Saruman was probably a great wizard who was proficient in black magic. Thoughts? Who dares to expose? Who dares to offend? They searched through the list of wizards registered by the Ministry of Magic, but did not find a wizard named Saruman, who obviously used a false name. Why use a pseudonym? I don't want others to know. Therefore, Liechtenstein's Minister of Magic is also one of the top 2. Now he has to receive accountability letters from various international organizations every day when he goes to work. However, due to internal and external pressures, he does not dare to reveal the slightest, so he can only bear it silently. You thought you were helping me, but you actually ruined my plan. Artel sighed, and he was still thinking that through this troll incident, Saruman's name was initially spread in the wizarding world. We have to find another opportunity. The giant oak is still in the system space, you can use it. Artel put the Daily Prophet aside, glanced at the time, and it was almost 11 o'clock. Tonight is Christmas Eve. Some members of the Shelby family went to midnight mass. Speaking of which, Artel's 2 uncles and aunts were devout Christians, especially Jimmy. Artel remembered that when he was a child, Jimmy would go to church every now and then to repent. Just half a day. It was only later that he learned that Jimmy went to atonement after every street shootout. He even shouted Amen, God bless things as he pulled the trigger. Christmas Eve. Tomorrow Christmas, Harry will receive the invisibility cloak, and then he will go out for night walks at night. I think he went to the forbidden area and came out and saw Snape and Quirrell. Well, I'll go back tomorrow night. A smile crept up Artel's mouth, remembering that Snape had vaguely sensed someone nearby, but he couldn't see it because Harry was wearing the invisibility cloak. This time he planned to help Snape and let Snape grab Harry's invisibility cloak directly. With Snape's character, Gryffindor's 50 points are deducted, and Dumbledore is not easy to use, I said. Artel thought this scene should be fun, but unfortunately it couldn't be filmed. In addition to this, he also planned to go to the Forbidden Forest as Saruman to chat with Shi Luo. Artel actually wanted to know when the memories of these Lord of the Rings creatures that were summoned by the system were created, and what were their memories. How do you see yourself suddenly appearing in the new world? By the way, since Harry is going to the forbidden area, then I can get another piece of parchment. This is a good opportunity. Artel's eyes lit up. So far, he has made 2 pieces of parchment. The first one recorded some things about the Guard of the Ring, which led to Balrog and Arya of Light. After being discovered by Hermione, he gave it to Dang Bullido. The second parchment, which records the origin of the Broodmother Shalab and the animal potion, was placed in Quirrell's office, and Artel has not yet been found. The third one. After completing the Halloween Trolls branch, Artel already has 150 story points, and it only takes 10 story points to exchange for a parchment, which is still very cheap for him. Artel opened the system store, exchanged an ancient parchment, and took out a quill from the system space. Under the control of Artel's mental power, the quill pen swiftly recorded it on the parchment. Recorded in 3018 of the Third Age of Middle-earth, October 26. In order to destroy that thing, we decided to set up the Fellowship of the Ring expedition. According to the ancient prophecy, the main members of the expedition must be 9 people, which corresponds to the 9 evil spirit knights of the Demon King. The kind Baggins can resist the temptation of that thing, so he must become one of the members of the expedition, and I, as the only wizard, will also be the leader of the expedition. The other members have also been chosen: Aragorn, the King of Gondor; Boromir, the Guardian of the White Tower of Gondor; Legolas, the son of the Elf King; Gimli, the King of the Turin Dwarves. 9 members have been selected. The Fellowship of the Ring has been successfully formed in the valley, and after the repair is completed, we will set off for Mordor, where we will completely destroy that thing. I don't know how many difficulties and dangers there will be along the way, but I have to do it in order to protect the world. And you, my old friend, I will prove your choices wrong. You who betrayed the Holy White Council will eventually dissipate with the darkness. Chapter 71. After the quill pen wrote the last word, it slowly landed on the table next to it, and then the ink on the parchment began to dry up, and finally turned into a very old and dilapidated look. Artel picked up the parchment, checked it, made sure there was nothing missing, and put it in the system space. This parchment does not introduce any special creatures and magic, but it records the composition and purpose of the members of the Fellowship of the Ring expedition in detail, which is equivalent to the general outline. Tomorrow night, Harry Potter, who went to the forbidden area to look for Nicole May's deeds, will find this parchment by accident. After escaping from the library, he will be found by Professor Snape, and the parchment will be confiscated. The script has been written, just waiting for the actors to be in place. Artel snapped his fingers, and Sophia came in from outside the door. Master Artel, what are your orders? It's nothing, give me a glass of hot milk, I want to rest, don't bother me after that, if you want to go out for a walk, just go. Artel plans to go to the Ministry of Magic in London soon. Saruman's character design still needs to be established, and tonight on Christmas Eve, the giant oak has to be released to be happy. Okay, thank you, Master. Sophia happily agreed. This is the first time Sophia has gone abroad, because Michael and Jimmy went to the midnight mass, and the servants they brought along went out to play, only Sophia stayed here. Now that she can go out to play by herself, Sophia is of course happy. After 5 minutes, Sophia brought Artel a glass of hot milk. After watching Artel drink it, she changed his pajamas for him, turned off the light for him, and left. Artel opened his eyes 5 minutes after Sophia had left. Putting on a set of wizard robes, Artel left a little magic in the house, and then put on the Ring of Air, performed polymorphism, and Saruman with long grey hair and a scepter reappeared in Holibo Special World. Snapped. The scepter in Artel's hand paused lightly, and he used an apparition. The next second, Artel came to the outside of the Ministry of Magic in London. The reason why I didn't go to the Swiss Ministry of Magic was mainly because I was apparently traveling in Switzerland. Although the probability of others linking Saruman to himself is very small, in order to avoid the situation where he appears and where Saruman appears, Artel chooses to spend more mana and teleport himself to London. The headquarters of the British Ministry of Magic is located in the basement of Whitehall in central London. Artel has only heard of it, but has never been there. He remembers that there are 2 ways to enter the Ministry of Magic. The normal staff access is to take the fireplace through the flow network. Visitors come through a red, dilapidated phone booth. After the Ministry of Magic was taken over by Voldemort, the flow network was discontinued, and employees had to flush themselves to the Ministry of Magic with flush toilets. However, Artel, who can already apparate, certainly won't be so troublesome. He looked at the lively city center, and in the next second, Artel came to the hall of the Ministry of Magic in the basement of Whitehall. Since it was Christmas Eve, the Ministry of Magic was basically empty, and the reception was empty. The hall was warm, though, with fires burning in the rows of fireplaces on either side, a golden fountain gushing from the statue of the Magic Brothers in the center, and Christmas decorations everywhere. Artel took a look, and in front of the security checkpoint on the left side of the main hall, he saw an unshaven guard on duty wearing a peacock blue robe. The security checkpoints at the Ministry of Magic have special magic powers to conduct security checks on visiting visitors, and guards will register visitors' wands. Eric Munch, who was on the night shift, apparently did not expect anyone to visit the Ministry of Magic on Christmas Eve night. He straightened up and motioned for Artel to come over for security. Artel walked over calmly and stopped in front of the security checkpoint. Hello. The old and steady voice made Munch, who was sleepy, wake up instantly. He glanced at the old wizard in front of him, and confirmed that he had never seen this person, let alone the leader of the Ministry of Magic, so he said, "It's off-duty time now, if you have anything to register, someone will contact you on the working day." "Don't bother, I'm just here to pick up a friend." Artel interrupted Munch. He glanced at the Ministry of Magic and saw no patrollers. Do the Ministry of Magic believe that only one guard can ensure the safety of this place? Or are there other guards on other floors? However, when he thought of the scene in the Order of the Phoenix where Harry came to the Ministry of Magic to find the prophecy ball and fought with Death Eaters in the Ministry of Magic, Artel felt that even if there were other guards, it might not be useful. Pick up friends. At this time, except for the guards on duty, everyone else has left. Munch was stunned for a moment, then asked again. Which department is your friend from? Well, he's not a clerk at the Ministry of Magic, he's just a poor hobbit who was accidentally thrown into Azkaban and brought here. Artel spoke slowly, and Munch's face changed slowly after listening. Some time ago, the news of someone breaking into Azkaban caused a lot of uproar, and of course he knew it. Later, I heard that the guy was insane, tormented by that mad woman in Slaytranch, and the Ministry of Magic in London took a lot of work to get the person to be secretly imprisoned by the Ministry of Magic with the consent of the International Confederation of Wizards. The great Dumbledore is said to have visited in person. Now the old wizard in front of him says, that guy is his friend. Hobbit, is that thing human? Munch looked at Artel cautiously, he had already realized that Artel was not a good person. Artel watched the face of the guard on duty in front of him change several times, smiled slightly, and said in a low voice, "So, can you let me meet my friend? Sorry, your friend is currently in a state of no visitation. If you want to see him, please wait until the working day to register again. This matter is now under the jurisdiction of the Department of Mysteries." Munch didn't finish his words, because he saw the old wizard opposite him raising his scepter. "What are you going to do?" Munch was holding his wand and staring at Artel, and if he did something wrong, he would release magic without hesitation. "You are now acting on suspicion of trespassing at the Ministry of Magic, attempting to injure Ministry of Magic officers. Put down your wand, immediately, immediately." Munch snarled. Artel grinned. The scepter in his hand paused on the ground, and an old voice sounded in Munch's ear. "Don't be so nervous, little guy, I'm just here to see my friends, and since it's inconvenient now, that's fine, but tonight is Christmas Eve, and since I'm here, I'll always give some presents." Artel looked at the gleaming dark wood floors and the peacock blue ceiling in the golden hall, and said, "The atmosphere of Christmas is still a little worse, so let me give you a Christmas tree." The wand in Artel's hand made a humming sound, and Munch felt that something was wrong and shouted, "What are you doing? Stop." "Oh, Merlin's beard, what is this?" A white layer appeared on Artel's body. He cast a light shield spell on himself, and then through the system, he cast the giant oak at his side. As an ente, the giant rafter is 5 meters tall, with a human face and a tree body, and his tan eyes flash with dark green light from time to time, and he seems to have a vague feeling of brutal anger. Munch had never seen such a creature, but he had no doubts about its destructive power. "Merry Christmas," Artel said to the stunned Munch, then pointed the scepter to the Magic Brother sculpture in the center of the hall. The power of the Ring of Air was activated, and Artel used magic to leave a line on it. "Merry Christmas to the Ministry of Magic in London, Saruman of the White Council." After doing this, Artel smiled at Munch, and then the figure disappeared. Munch only reacted at this time, and quickly pressed the emergency alarm under the inspection table. At this time, the giant oak also completely woke up. It stayed in Artel's system space for so long, and its head was a little muddled, and it wasn't until it breathed fresh air that it woke up a little bit. Of course, this fresh air is also relative to the closed environment of the system space. It is definitely incomparable to the air of Fagin Forest. The giant oak opened his eyes, and the splendid halls of the Ministry of Magic made it very uncomfortable, and the burning fireplace around it made it inexplicably angry. "This is not Fagin Forest. Where is this?" There was a hint of doubt in the voice of the giant oak. Its face full of bark folds moved, and it saw Munch, who was cautiously guarding the side. "Humanity," the voice of the giant oak was whispering like a terrifying giant. "It's your conspiracy again. Send me back to Fagin Forest, this place stinks." The giant oak roared loudly, its eyes flashed a green light, and the two arms wrapped around the branches were raised high and slammed into the security check in front of Munch. In just an instant, the poor security checkpoint turned into a mass of scum. Munch cast an armor on himself, and the terrifying aftermath shook him out. He coughed twice and held up his wand, but he didn't dare to cast a spell on the giant oak. He was afraid to provoke the terrifying fellow. Now alone, Munch has no intention of dedicating his life to the Ministry of Magic, especially on a wonderful night like Christmas Eve. At this time, the guards patrolling other floors also came to the hall because of the emergency alarm, and saw the giant rafters that were being destroyed everywhere. Everyone's expressions changed from anger to confusion, and from confusion to panic. "Merlins, notify the director and the minister. Go and contact the Auror office." Several guards on duty shouted, but no one dared to step forward. One of the guards dared to cast a fire-making spell on the giant oak, setting a small flame on the head of the giant rafter. Fire! The giant rafter paused for a moment, and then the branches and leaves all over his body quivered. Flames! Humans! The giant oak let out a roar that shook the sky, and the two arms waved like whips. The decorations in the hall, the walls, and everything that the giant oak touched were turned into pieces in an instant. And the guard who cast the fire-making spell was also targeted by the giant oak. Seeing this behemoth rushing towards him, the guard was immediately frightened. Super armor protection. At the last critical moment, the guard only heard a voice coming from his ear, and then his eyes turned into a white patch, followed by a sharp pain, and the guard flew out and fell unconscious on the ground. The magician was performed by a wizard who looked like an old lion, Rufus Scrimgeour, head of the Auror office. Scrimgeour served in the Ministry of Magic as an Auror when he was young, and spent most of his time battling dark wizards, and after countless battles, big and small, became the head of the Auror's office. During the Second Wizarding War, Scrimgeour also succeeded Fudge as Minister of Magic. However, this super strong armor body obviously did not achieve the effect Scrimgeour expected. Seeing the guards on duty being knocked into the air, Scrimgeour's face became ugly. "Who can tell me what the hell is going on?" Scrimgeour looked at the other guards. Munch rushed behind him in a panic, and briefly explained. "A hobbit friend. A Christmas tree." Scrimgeour looked at the crazy giant oak, and an absurd delusion rose in his mind. But it was clear that someone was provoking them to the Ministry of Magic. Above the Ministry of Magic is Whitehall in central London. Once the giant oak rushes out, the impact will be immeasurable. Scrimgeour held the wand in his handshake, and suddenly found a little feeling of blood boiling in his youth. He wandered around the giant rafters and tentatively cast a few spells. The skin of the giant oak is that kind of rough bark, but it is very hard, and there is a light green light flowing, which can resist most spells, and Scrimgeour and the guards on duty do not dare to get too close, can only allow the giant oak to frantically destroy in the halls of the Ministry of Magic. All they could do was try to keep the giant rafters from leaving the halls of the Ministry of Magic. Fortunately, as more and more Aurors rushed over, the mad giant oak was finally completely restrained by many wizards, and in the end, he could only stand there and be beaten, roaring incompetently and furiously. Just as Scrimgeour led the Aurors to the stalemate with the giant oak, more and more magicians rushed to the Ministry of Magic, and Fudge, then the Minister of Magic, also came here. He was at home enjoying Christmas Eve with his family when he suddenly received urgent news that someone had broken into the Ministry of Magic, and Fudge was of course very unhappy that this had happened during his tenure, but when he saw the crazy oak, Fudge, who had planned to teach the intruder a lesson, was suddenly stunned. What is this? Fudge usually likes to read books, but after thinking about it several times, he couldn't match the magical animals in his mind with the giant oak. Looks like a giant husk to me. Umbridge whispered to the side. This old woman who likes to wear pink frilly skirts is Fudge's confidant, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Magic. Fudge glanced at Umbridge and nodded in satisfaction, agreeing with her statement. Speaking of which, this thing really looks like a casserole that has been magnified countless times. Send someone for Dumbledore and Newt Scamander, and they're better at this kind of stuff. Oh God. Before Fudge finished speaking, he exclaimed. It turned out that Scrimgeour didn't pay attention and was slapped away by the giant oak. Fortunately, Scrimgeour had several layers of protective spells on his body, but even so, he spat out a mouthful of blood. I said long ago that these magical creatures should be regulated, and now even the cauldron has become so terrifying. I'd like to see what the guys from the International Federation of Wizards think of me this time before. Proposal. Fudge muttered angrily, and Umbridge, who was beside him, took a pen to write down the incident. If Minister Fudge forgot, she would dutifully remind him. What are you looking at? Go and help. Fudge commanded those later Ministry of Magic staff, although they were not Aurors, but they were many and powerful, and it was always helpful. The giant rafter was destroyed in the Ministry of Magic. In the end, it was invincible with 2 fists and 4 hands, and was knocked unconscious by a group of Aurors, but it also completed its mission. The floor of the hall of the Ministry of Magic could not be found intact. All the surrounding fireplaces were smashed to pieces, and even the sculpture of the Magic Brothers in the center of the square was smashed into a whole piece of gold cake. Looking at the hall of the Ministry of Magic that had been turned into ruins, Fudge had a gloomy face, and found Munch on duty to start questioning. An old man with gray hair and a long beard. Everyone present had no impression of the person described by Munch, and finally, under the guidance of Munch, everyone came to the Magic Brother sculpture. An Auror cast a healing spell, and the sculpture returned to its original shape, but the line of writing on it could not be erased by magic. Merry Christmas to the Ministry of Magic in London, Saruman of the White Council. These characters and pens seemed to possess a special kind of magic power, literally emitting light, resisting the power of the repairing spell. The wizard who left this line of words is very powerful. The Auror who cast the restoration charm said in a low voice. Fudge's face was even more ugly. He subconsciously wanted to get the magic wand around his waist, but after thinking about it, he decided not to be ashamed. Seeing this, Amelia Bournes, director of the Legal Enforcement Department, took out her wand and waved it at the sculpture. After a crackling sound, the writing disappeared. Everyone just breathed a sigh of relief when they saw a flash of red light on the sculpture. The handwriting reappeared. Fudge was very glad that the handwriting had not acted rashly just now. He pondered for a while, looked at the silent man of the Department of Mysteries beside him, and asked, "What kind of organization is this Holy White Council?" The other party shook his head, expressing that he did not know. Fudge's brows were already twisted together, and he looked at Munch again and asked, "You just said, that's Saruman, who claims to be a friend of the Hobbit." "Right. Yes, he originally said he was here to pick up a friend, the guy who broke into Azkaban." After getting Munch's answer, everyone present was very worried. This so-called Holy White Council is very mysterious, and they have never heard of it. The other party had already shown an unfriendly attitude when they first came to the Ministry of Magic, which had to make them think more. "Close up this giant tree protection pot first, let the magical zoologist study it, and when Dumbledore arrives, let him go to the minister's office to see me, as for the rest." Fudge glanced at the crowd, and said to Umbridge, "Anything about tonight's incident is not allowed to leak, neither the Daily Prophet nor the Wizarding Weekly, and I don't want them reporting this." "Of course, Mr. Minister." Umbridge nodded, Fudge sighed, and turned to the office. "Christmas does not make people restless and tired." "That, Deputy Minister, what about this?" A wizard in the logistics department pointed to the writing on the statue and looked at Umbridge. Umbridge tilted his head to look, snapped his fingers, and said, "When Dumbledore comes, let him solve this first, and then let him go to the minister's office. Now, everyone act. I want you to restore the hall to its original state within 10 minutes. As soon as Umbridge finished speaking, she saw several people appear at the entrance of the hall. One of them was a woman she knew very well, and it was Rita Skeeter, a reporter from the Daily Prophet. "Oh, look, the Ministry of Magic has really been attacked." Seeing the appearance of the Ministry of Magic Hall at this time, Rita showed an exaggerated expression. She quickly raised the camera in her hand and pressed the shutter on the ruined Ministry of Magic Hall. The staff behind her also took action. Many people slapped the giant oak that had collapsed on the ground, and one of them saw the writing on the Magic Brothers sculpture and ran over to take a few close-ups. "Stop, who allowed you to take pictures here?" Umbridge rushed up immediately, spreading his arms to block the camera. Rita took this scene unhurriedly, and then a notebook and a quill flew out of her bag, and along with Rita's words, she recorded it. "When we arrived at the Ministry of Magic, it was already in ruins, and the person who started all this was the, well, let's call it a tree man. The most dazzling Brotherhood of Magic fountain in the hall of the Ministry of Magic was also damaged. On the sculpture made of pure gold, there was left the behind-the-scenes instigator of the attack, a man named Saru from the organization of the Holy White Council. Man's sorcerer. Saruman. I seem to have read this name in a biography. He seems to be one of the most evil dark wizards of this century, according to the grapevine, he and many." Just when Rita was talking nonsense, Umbridge rushed in front of her and shouted angrily, "Give me the photo, otherwise I'll be charged with trespassing at the Ministry of Magic." Rita smiled indifferently, and the quill continued to record. While journalists were seeking the truth, they were threatened by then Deputy Minister for Magic, Ms. Dolores Umbridge, raising doubts about her connection to the man behind this incident. What is the purpose of the Ministry of Magic trying to hide the truth? Minister Fudge. As it was being recorded, Dumbledore's figure appeared in the hall. His face was a little heavy, and he obviously got some news. When Rita saw Dumbledore, her eyes lit up. She abandoned Umbridge and walked towards Dumbledore. "Headmaster Dumbledore, didn't expect you to come to the Ministry of Magic too, for this attack. Do you know this wizard named Saruman? Someone broke the news that you have an extraordinary relationship with Gandalf, who created the aria of light magic. Is this true? Do you also think he was a wizard from 1,000 years ago? Or is he actually?" At this time, Artel had returned to the hotel in Geneva. Before leaving London, he went to the building of the Daily Prophet. He believed that the Ministry of Magic in London should have been messed up. ENT's words, although not recorded on the parchment, but Gulu has lived in the Misty Mountains for 500 years, and the Fagon Forest is near the Misty Mountains. He must be familiar with Ent. When he sees the giant rafters, he will maybe some memory can be recovered. Wouldn't Dumbledore be shocked by then? Artel chuckled softly. He only hoped that the well-informed Dumbledore would not be frightened by Gollum's memory. Ministry of Magic, London. After Dumbledore finally got rid of the female reporter named Rita, surrounded by everyone, he came to the Magic Brothers sculpture. Professor Dumbledore, that's it, that's what the man left behind. Amelia pointed to the writing on the sculpture and said, her expression was a little embarrassed. After all, she tried to remove the magic mark before but failed. This. After Dumbledore saw the magical writing left by Artel, his pupils shrank suddenly, and a hint of surprise flashed across his peaceful face. Excellent transfiguration. Dumbledore sighed sincerely. That's right, the magic of Artel's writing on the sculpture is a kind of transfiguration. Unless someone can surpass him in transfiguration, or even if the magic is stronger than him, it is impossible to erase this magic. Unless this pure gold magic sculpture is completely destroyed. Amelia, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do either. Dumbledore stepped forward to observe for a while, then looked back at Amelia, shook his head and smiled bitterly. This Saruman has surpassed me in transfiguration. This spell is very complicated, if you want to crack it. I can't do it alone. Dumbledore said, and the wand in his hand waved in front of the sculpture. Accompanied by a crackling sound, a wisp of black smoke emerged, and the self on the sculpture was bluntly erased, but it quickly resurfaced. You saw it too. Dumbledore shrugged his shoulders, indicating that there was nothing he could do. Everyone was silent, only Rita was writing for the headlines of the Daily Prophet tomorrow. Dumbledore, who is known as the Great White Wizard of this century, admitted that his transfiguration is far inferior to the mysterious wizard Saruman, which makes us have to doubt the authenticity of this matter. You must know that Dumbledore was a professor of transfiguration at Hogwarts before he became the headmaster of Hogwarts. Whether there is anyone in this world who can compare with him in transfiguration is still open to debate, so the reporter has reason. I suspect that there may be another secret relationship between Dumbledore and the mysterious Saruman. According to people familiar with the matter, Dumbledore may also secretly participated in the mysterious organization of the Holy White Council. In this Christmas Eve incident, Dumbledore may be a direct participant. Rita learned to be smart this time, and didn't read her thoughts directly, and Dumbledore naturally didn't notice what she was writing. After confirming that he could not erase this line of writing, Dumbledore stopped spending time and walked to the unconscious giant oak. A look of sadness flashed across his face. Another amazing animal he had never heard of. Last time it was a troll that was very similar to a troll but completely different, and this time it was something that looked like a giant tree protector. I don't know what kind of creature this is. Keep it locked up and wait for the people from the Department of Management and Control of Magical Creatures and the scholars of magical zoology to identify it. Dumbledore looked at the comatose giant rafter. He could sense an unusual force from this huge body, and now there are still some areas in the hall of the Ministry of Magic that have not been repaired, and it can be seen from the degree of damage. How strong is the combat power of things? For the sake of safety, Dumbledore cast a sleeping charm on the giant oak, and then let others take the giant oak to the exclusive prison of the Department of Mysteries on the 9th floor. Umbridge came to Dumbledore and said arrogantly, "Headmaster Dumbledore, Minister Fudge wants to see you. He is waiting for you in the office. It just so happens that I have something to do to find him." Dumbledore glanced at her, got up and went to the office of the Minister of Magic. Fudge's office was on the 1st floor, and next to it were the office of the Minister's Advisor, the office of the Senior Deputy Minister, and the office of the Assistant Minister, etc. Fudge was drinking tea there when Dumbledore came to the Minister's office. "Oh, Dumbledore, you are finally here." Fudge breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Dumbledore. "Come and sit down." Fudge graciously invited Dumbledore to sit down and poured him a cup of hot tea. "How's it going? I mean, what do you think about tonight's?" "To be honest, Fudge, I have no clue." Dumbledore shook his head. He was a little confused now, and for the first time he had a feeling of being old. "I have never heard of the organization of the Holy White Council, and Saruman, he is a very powerful wizard, but I have no impression." Dumbledore looked at Fudge and asked, "That Saruman, did he really say he was a friend of the Hobbit?" That's what the guard on duty said. Fudge nodded, he looked out cautiously, and lowered his voice. Could it have something to do with that thing? Dumbledore took a deep look at Fudge. He knew that Fudge was talking about the Lord of the Rings, and that day he met Gollum under Fudge's supervision, because Fudge didn't believe him, so Fudge also learned clues about the Lord of the Rings. Dumbledore knew Fudge very well. This weak Minister of Magic was actually full of desire for money, power and status, and the Lord of the Rings, for Fudge, was undoubtedly full of allure. I think so. Dumbledore nodded, and he took a deep breath. The other party came for the Hobbit. As for why he didn't take him away, maybe he couldn't find the dungeon of the Ministry of Magic, or maybe there were some other considerations, but he must know, or even know the Hobbit. Bitmans. It is even possible that the entire organization of the Holy White Council exists for that ring, and it is hard to imagine how long this organization has existed and how many means it has. Dumbledore was silent for a while, his voice getting deeper and deeper. I even suspect that the previous troll and the big spider in the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts were all created by them. A look of fear flashed across Fudge's face, and his hand holding the teacup trembled. Then what do you think we should do? The other party only brought one magical creature this time. It can be used as a test or a warning. If the Hobbit is not handed over, maybe the next time. Dumbledore did not explain, but Fudge already understood what he meant. Hand over that Hobbit. Fudge fell silent, he thought for a while, and a ruthless expression appeared on his face. Gollum was the only clue he had access to the One Ring, and there was no way Fudge could hand him over. I don't believe that Saruman dares to attack the Ministry of Magic. This time he can cause so much damage, it is entirely because there are not many people in the Ministry of Magic on Christmas Eve. Next time he dares to come, I will definitely take him personally. Send it to Azkaban. Fudge was hard-hearted, but Dumbledore saw his guilty conscience. Since you've made a choice, I won't say much more, let me meet the Hobbit. I think, he may know what that magical creature is, and maybe he will know something about the Saint White Council thing. I will go with you. Fudge thought about it for a while, but was still worried about letting Dumbledore go alone. In his heart, Dumbledore was also a person who coveted the Lord of the Rings. The two left the minister's office and took the elevator to the Department of Mysteries on the 9th floor. Under the leadership of Fudge, they came to a secret confinement room. There were two Aurors at the door of the confinement room. They looked like they were in their 30s or 40s. They were the elite of the Aurors and they were used to guard Gollum. Even if such a big thing happened at the Ministry of Magic just now, they did not leave. Minister. When the two Aurors saw Fudge, they respectfully greeted him. Well, open the door. Yes. One of the Aurors waved his wand, and a mysterious pattern appeared on the door of the confinement room. With a click, the closed iron door opened automatically. Fudge walked in first, with Dumbledore following behind him. The confinement room was very dark and there was almost no light. Fudge directly used the lighting spell, and the soft white light dispelled the darkness. Only then did the two see that Gollum was curled up in the corner, looking at the two of them with fear. Guru, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Dumbledore raised his hands flatly, indicating that he was not threatening, and looked at Gollum kindly. Gulu's yellow-green eyes stared at him tightly, the expression on his face seemed to ease a little, but his tone was still a little gloomy. Do not come. You have taken my baby. I have nothing left. Gulu was talking, playing with his few locks of hair with both hands, his body suddenly trembled, and he shouted frantically. The thief. Baggins. The thief. We hate him forever. Forever. Take it easy, Gollum. Well, no one's going to hurt you. Take it easy. Dumbledore tried to appease Gollum. With a wave of his right hand, he cast a magic spell without a cane that could calm people down. Gollum's voice became quieter, and the expression on his face became much calmer. Gulu, I want to ask you if you know Sheng Bai Li Wanghao will meet. Holy White Council, Gulu muttered in a low voice. He turned around in the corner a few times, his big eyes flashed blankly, and then he stopped abruptly. Yes, yes, you are talking about the Council of the Wise. It is an organization established by the wise among elves and wizards to guide people against the shadows. The Holy White Council was established in 2463 of the Third Age, and its dissolution was in 2953 of the Third Age. and Guru was born in 2430 of the Third Age, so it can be said that it was just in time, so he was very familiar with the Holy White Council. The White Council? No. Don't let them know. They'll take my baby. My baby. Gulu muttered a few words, and his thoughts were confused again. Dumbledore frowned, took out his wand and tapped it. Gollum's mood eased again, and then Dumbledore waved his wand again, using transfiguration to form a small giant oak in front of him, and asked, Guru, do you know what this is? Gulu waited for his eyes to look over, was startled suddenly, ran to the corner and shrank. It's an ent. He's an ent. How dare you catch an ent? They won't let you go. They won't let you go. Gollum screamed, and Dumbledore took advantage of this opportunity to cast Dimension on Gollum. No way, he needs to know more information. After a long time, Dumbledore opened his eyes, glanced at the drowning Gollum, and cast a spell to make him fall asleep. How about it? Fudge on the side quickly asked. Dumbledore was silent for a while, then spit out 3 words. Hard to say. Dumbledore really didn't know what to say. He even felt that Gollum's memory had been irreversibly damaged because of the Cruciatus curse many times, and it had been confused with some of his own fantasies. How else to explain what he saw? Why is there a place in the world called the Misty Mountains? Next to the Misty Mountains, there is an ancient primitive jungle called Fagin Forest, where lived an ancient race called Ent. What dwarves, elves, hobbits? The Dark Lord Sauron, who is trying to rule the world. Is this real? Dumbledore was also confused, and even felt a little panic. Although Gollum's memory was only a few fragments, it was so real and so terrifying. Just like, Dumbledore never really understood the world. Is there another mysterious world beyond the wizarding world? It seems that wizards have hidden the fact that wizards exist from muggles through various means, so is there a possibility? They wizards are also muggles to the existence of the so-called Holy White Council, hobbits, elf dwarves, etc. exist. They also hide the proof of their existence through some means. To be honest, Dumbledore really panicked at this moment. It's hard to say, what does this mean? Fudge's face was ugly. He took it for granted that Dumbledore had obtained some important information but was unwilling to share it with him. Any clues about that ring? Fudge asked reluctantly. Dumbledore glanced at him, nodded, and replied. The Lord of the Rings. It was created by a terrifying dark wizard known as the Dark Lord Sauron. It is said that this ring has the power to control the world, but the fingers of that ring were taken by a hobbit named Baggins. It was stolen, and Gollum doesn't know where it is now. That's it. Fudge looked at Dumbledore suspiciously. Except for the name of Sauron, he already knew the other news. After all, Gollum would call Baggins dozens of times a day that Baggins was a thief, and anyone who stole his treasure could figure it out. That's all. Dumbledore nodded, feeling that there was no need for Fudge to know the other news. Otherwise, it won't necessarily cause any trouble. As for whether Fudge would find other legilimency masters, Dumbledore was not worried at all about it. Gollum's mood was very unstable, and the memory fragments were very complicated. Ordinary legilimency people couldn't check his memory at all. He, Snape, and a few others were the only ones who could do this, and Fudge didn't have the ability to invite others over. Especially the news about the Lord of the Rings, Fudge will not let more people know, otherwise once the news leaks out, the entire wizarding world will be shaken. It now seems that the goal of the Holy White Council is also the Supreme Lord of the Rings. How to deal with this hobbit depends on your choice, not enough. My suggestion is, talk to them. Dumbledore suggested to Fudge that he would actually like to meet this Saruman. Dumbledore had little interest in the Lord of the Rings, but he was interested in his own speculation and what happened at Hogwarts. These bizarre things were buried in his heart like a nail, making him a little restless. I will think about it, Fudge responded, glancing at Gollum, who had fallen asleep, and leaving the cell with Dumbledore. The next day, December 25th, Christmas. In a dentist's office in Manchester, Hermione opened her eyes from her deep sleep. She stretched comfortably, nestled in the warm blanket, and inexplicably thought of Artel. It's Christmas today, and I don't know how Artel is in Switzerland. Hermione grumbled, opened the small gift box beside the pillow, and took out the moon oak leaf from it. The leaf turned into an earring in Hermione's hand, and Hermione hung it lightly on her ear, suddenly feeling a lot more lucid. Merry Christmas, Artel, Hermione whispered something, got up and changed into pajamas. Just when she was about to leave the bedroom, there was a rustling sound from the window. It's an owl. Hermione's eyes lit up and she ran over quickly. A brown owl landed on her windowsill with a letter in its mouth and a small package in its claws. It must be Artel. Thinking like this, Hermione opened the window, and the owl flew in, put something on her desk, and looked at Hermione with her head tilted. Hermione couldn't wait to open the envelope, which contained several postcards, some photos and a note that said Merry Christmas. Hermione recognized it as Artel's note, and jumped for joy. Cuckoo. The owl hooted, and it flew from Switzerland to Manchester, without even eating meat on the way. Oh, I forgot about you. Hermione only reacted when she heard the call of the owl. In order to thank this little messenger, Hermione secretly went to the kitchen and cut a piece of raw beef. Watching the owl feast on the side, Hermione checked what Artel had sent her. Not to mention a few postcards, all of them are famous tourist attractions in Switzerland. Looking at the snowy mountains and lakes above them like a fairy tale kingdom, Hermione pouted and snorted softly. After carefully putting away the postcards, Hermione took out the photos. The photos were all taken by Sophia for Artel. There were solo photos and group photos. Artel came from later generations after all. The style of the photos was fashionable and avant-garde, and it felt like a blockbuster. Hermione was eye-opening. These pictures are so beautiful. Hermione grumbled, turning the pictures over and seeing Artel's words behind each picture. You should be a dream, I should be a gust of wind. Hermione didn't quite understand what this sentence meant, but she felt inexplicably happy. Distance brings two hearts closer together. I have seen the snow-capped mountains in Switzerland, but they are not as pure as your eyes. What is this? Artel is, really. Hermione read every sentence behind the photo, blushed suddenly, tilted her head and looked outside, carefully hiding the photo. When I see you, I must teach you a good lesson. Hermione waved her hand as if Artel was right in front of her, and then she took a deep breath and opened the small package that the owl had brought. There are some special Swiss sweets and trinkets in it. In addition to that, there is a beautiful gift box. After Hermione opened it, she found a delicate women's pocket watch, pure gold. Artel has a pure gold pocket watch, which he always likes to put in the left pocket of his vest, with the bracelet hanging on the button. Artel said that is the habit of the Shelby family. Now Artel gave her a pocket watch. Hermione couldn't help thinking too much. She opened her pocket watch and laughed out loud. There was a picture of Artel on the pocket watch. She was wearing a suit and a newsboy cap. She looked very serious and handsome. Really annoying. Hermione grumbled, looked again, and put the watch away. It's just that this gift is too expensive. I must give it back to him next time I see him. Speaking of what Artel's family does, the pure gold pocket watch was given to me like this. Hermione's face became more and more red, and at the same time as she felt uneasy, a different kind of emotion also spread. Merry Christmas, my darling, out for breakfast. Mrs. Granger's voice came from outside. Hermione was startled, and hurriedly packed her things, opened the window and let the owl out, and then shouted. Here I am. Merry Christmas, Mom and Dad. Meanwhile, at Hogwarts, the Gryffindor quarters. Excited Harry and Ron are unwrapping their Christmas presents. Harry's uncle and aunt gave him a 50-pence coin as a Christmas present, which was asked by Ron, who had never seen Muggle money. Seeing Ron's ecstatic face, Harry didn't think this Christmas present was that bad. In addition to the coins, Harry also received a handmade flute by Hagrid and a large dark fuchsia sweater knitted for him by Ron's mother, said to be a special Weasley family. Here's a big box of chocolate frogs from Hermione. Ron opened the chocolate frog and muttered. We seem to have sent her a box of candy too. Let me see this. Oh. This is so pretty. Ron opened the gift from Artel, which were also several postcards from Switzerland, as well as various sweets unique to Switzerland. Is this Muggle candy? It looks delicious. Is this candy called Swiss? Ron opened a fondant and looked at Harry, who was holding a liquid-like, silver-gray cloak. Oh, God. Ron stood up abruptly from the ground, pointed to the cloak in Harry's hand, and screamed. I've heard of this thing. It's an invisibility cloak. Ron lowered his voice, with a hint of awe on his face. This is definitely a very rare, very precious invisibility cloak. Don't believe you put it on and try it. Soon, The screams of the two were heard in the room, and Harry took off the invisibility cloak and saw a note falling out of it. Your father left this thing for me before he died, and it should be returned to you now. I hope you use it well. I sincerely wish you a Merry Christmas. The note was unsigned. Harry and Ron researched for a while and couldn't figure it out. They had a bit of a fight, and the Weasley twins and their various Percys came. Look, Harry got a Weasley sweater too, George said with a smile. They looked at Percy and laughed yin and yang. Percy, why don't you wear a sweater? P means prefect, you should wear it. George knew that his prefect brother was a fan of officials, and he had been reading a boring and terrifying book called How Prefects Gained Power. After playing for a while, a few people left the dormitory to attend the Christmas banquet. Hogwarts was very kind to the students who stayed at the school. The banquet was very lively. The long table was full of food, roasted turkeys, and potatoes, as well as roasts, steaks and small sausages. Harry and Ron had a happy meal, and the seniors went to the dance after eating a little something. In short, the whole Hogwarts was enveloped in an atmosphere of happiness and joy. On the other side, Artel and the Shelby family enjoyed a perfect Christmas family dinner, after which his two uncles and aunts went to a celebrity party hosted by one of the city's business tycoons. Artel didn't know what business the Shelby family had with these Swiss business tycoons, but looking at Michael and Jimmy, they obviously knew some Swiss friends, so Artel didn't care. And just like that, after an afternoon in Geneva, Artel returned to the hotel. Seeing that it was getting dark outside, Artel told Sophia not to disturb him, then closed the door tightly and took out the Isel spar. Tonight, Artel plans to infiltrate Hogwarts. He had a play to watch and a play to do, which Artel had been looking forward to for a long time. It's 10 o'clock in the evening. The picture inside the Isel spar flashed, and when he saw Harry and Ron returning to the dormitory to go to sleep, Artel's mouth curled into a smile. The next moment, his figure completely disappeared from the hotel room. Hogsmeade. This is a pure wizarding village near Hogwarts. Artel transformed into Saruman appeared in Hogmaud Square. Although there was a blizzard outside, Hogsmeade had a very strong Christmas atmosphere. Wizards were everywhere, and some people saw Artel and politely said hello. Although they didn't know the old man, on such a happy day, no one would be stingy with their kindness. Artel smiled back at those who greeted him. Artel glanced at it. The Three Broomsticks bar and the Pig's Head bar on the corner were the most lively. The noisy voice came from afar. Artel leaned on a scepter and walked step by step towards the Honeyduke candy store. No one noticed that Artel's figure suddenly disappeared under the snowstorm, leaving only a series of footprints drifting away. There are not many customers in the candy store. During the day, it is crowded with customers, and it is difficult to move. But at night, there are only some children running around the store. There was upbeat music in the store. A child was chewing bubble soup or bubble gum, making the room full of bluebell-colored bubbles. Artel walked into the store while the children were going in and out, and went straight to the store. Came outside the cellar. The shopkeepers, Mr. and Mrs. Frome, were chatting happily with the children, and unaware that someone had entered, Artel gently opened the cellar door, followed the ladder to the bottom, and found it among a pile of crates and wooden boxes. Block the trapdoor to Hogwarts. Not bad. Seeing that it was exactly the same as what he had imagined, Artel smiled silently, opened the trapdoor, and revealed a 200-step stone staircase leading directly to the ground. After passing through the stone stairs, there was a winding, tortuous dirt passage. Artel went around for 10 minutes, and then encountered an upward stone staircase. After passing through this stone staircase, Artel finally came to Hogwarts. The exit is the hunchbacked one-eyed witch statue on the 3rd floor of Hogwarts. Artel took out the Marauder's map that he had obtained from the Weasleys and opened it with a spell, and found that Harry's name was moving towards the 7th floor. Is it out yet? There's still time. Artel put away the Marauder's map, went directly to the Forbidden Book area on the 5th floor, put the parchment in a forbidden book, and waited quietly. After about 10 minutes, footsteps came from the entrance of the forbidden area. Artel looked in the direction of the sound, and found an oil lamp floating in the air, slowly moving inward. Soon, Harry appeared in front of Artel. Perhaps it was inconvenient to read a book while wearing a cloak and holding an oil lamp. Harry took off the cloak and rummaged in the forbidden books area. Artel raised his right hand and waved lightly, and the forbidden book containing the parchment suddenly trembled. Harry, who was not far away, was startled and turned around sharply holding the oil lamp. Seeing Harry's terrified face, Artel twitched the corners of his mouth, and he gently stretched out his hand, leaving a magic mark on Harry's body. Having been caught on both night tours, Harry can be said to be frightened now, and he knows that if he gets caught again, it will be miserable. Looks like there's something. Harry looked around and saw no one. He was relieved, a little bolder, and walked over slowly. Holding the oil lamp and looking around, I still found the book with the parchment on it. This is. Harry opened the book, pulled out the parchment, and just glanced at it when he heard a terrifying roar from the book, and a ghost-like thing wanted to rush out of the book, frightened. He directly smashed the oil lamp, and the entire forbidden area fell into darkness again. Who's over there? Filch, who was in charge of the patrol, happened to reach the 5th floor, and when he heard the sound, he rushed over quickly. Before Harry had time to think about it, he slammed the book shut, grabbed the parchment, and put on the invisibility cloak. Artel could clearly perceive Harry's position through the magic marker. When Filch was checking the forbidden area, Harry quietly left here, and Artel followed behind Harry. As soon as the two of them went upstairs, they heard Snape's indifferent voice coming from the darkness of the corner. You don't think of me as your enemy, Quirrell. You. Why? Are you looking for me? Professor Quirrell's voice was intermittent, with a trace of grievance, a trace of fear, like an air bag. You know very well that you should. Snape said this, suddenly stopped his voice, and looked at his side as if aware of it. Harry had just come to that position. It's here. It's finally here. Artel quietly walked behind Harry, ready to help Snape at a critical moment. Snape looked at the empty corridor suspiciously, and his intuition told him that something was here, especially when he thought of all the weird things that happened in Hogwarts some time ago. Snape was even more sensitive, he believed himself intuition is correct. He slowly stretched out his hand forward, his fingers spread out, slowly but extremely firm. Quirrell on the side looked at Snape dumbfounded, and his inner drama was very rich. He knew what Snape was looking for. This guy must have found his legs and was going to beat him up, but what did that mean now? What are you playing with yourself? I'll just quietly watch what Snape is doing. At the moment, Harry was covering his mouth in horror, slowly and carefully stepping back. He didn't expect that Snape's vigilance was so high that he could vaguely perceive himself wearing the invisibility cloak. But just when Harry thought he could escape, for some reason, an inexplicable force suddenly came from behind him. Is there no wall behind it? Without waiting for Harry to think, Harry took a staggered step forward under that power. Snape jolted violently, and he felt himself grabbing something. Bring it to you. Under Artel's inner voice, Snape jerked his hand back. The invisibility cloak was ripped off by Snape. Harry, with the parchment in his hand, appeared in front of Snape and Quirrell. Oh, it's Harry. Seeing the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him, Quirrell was so frightened that he subconsciously wanted to swear, but thinking of his identity and Snape still by his side, he could only hold back abruptly. Snape was also at a loss now. He didn't expect that with such a simple grab, he caught a Harry Potter. Is this guy just standing there waiting for him to rip off his invisibility cloak? It really sounds like fantastic. There was a sneer at the corner of Snape's mouth, but thinking that there was a guy like Quirrell standing in the way, Snape withdrew his smile, turned his head, and looked at Quirrell coldly. Professor Quirrell, it looks like our conversation is going to be delayed. We'll talk another day, when you've decided who you want to be loyal to. Okay. Quirrell stared at the invisibility cloak in Snape's hand and replied somewhat unwillingly. If he had this thing, he could easily steal the Philosopher's Stone and complete the task given to him by Voldemort, but Quirrell didn't have the courage to face Snape. He knew that he would not be Snape's opponent. Snape followed Quirrell's gaze and glanced at the invisibility cloak in his hand. A look of disgust flashed in his eyes. This was James Potter's thing. He originally thought it had been lost, but he didn't expect it to arrive. Harry's hand. It must have been given to him by Dumbledore. Well, then I'll go first. Quirrell turned his head and left. Snape looked at Harry, who was still in a daze, and sneered. Harry Potter, this is the 3rd time you've been caught on a night tour. You're so persevering. How stupid. He raised the invisibility cloak in his hand and continued. Your father relied on this thing, and you was never caught, but it's a pity that you didn't inherit his intelligence. Harry took a deep breath and calmed his excitement. He ignored Snape's cynicism, and looked back at the empty corridor. Harry didn't understand. It seemed that someone really pushed him from behind. If I knew this earlier, I should have just run straight away. Anyway, he was wearing an invisibility cloak. Even if Snape noticed someone, he couldn't know it was him. Well now, I was directly caught by Snape, and I still don't know how to punish myself. Just when Harry was secretly annoyed and wanted to slap himself twice, Snape continued. Now go to the office with me. I think we should have a good chat. With Snape's hands behind his back, Tsunere turned around and walked towards the basement. Harry pursed his lips and followed with a hopeless expression. Professor Snape, look at me in the forbidden area. Oh, have you caught this little guy? Filch came up with a broken oil lamp and smiled maliciously when he saw Harry following behind Snape. Harry Potter, it's you again. I'll see if you dare to run around in the future. Harry looked up at him and said nothing. Filch snorted twice, happily hugged his cat and went to inspect other floors up the mountain. Watching Harry and Snape leave, Artel left the Hogwarts castle in a good mood and came outside the Forbidden Forest. There were originally 2 Aurors from the Ministry of Magic outside the Forbidden Forest, who were responsible for guarding Shelob in the Forbidden Forest, but today was Christmas, and they believed in Dumbledore's magic enchantment, so they were lazy and went to the Pig's Head bar for a drink. This has also led to the fact that there is no one outside the Forbidden Forest. Artel had observed through the Isle Spar before, and Dumbledore was not at Hogwarts now, but was visiting his old friend in Nurmengard, which was understandable. After all, it was Christmas. Sorry, Principal, for interrupting your happy hour. Artel stopped outside the magic barrier in the Forbidden Forest. He closed his eyes and felt the magic barrier composed of majestic mana in front of him. He slowly raised his hand and tapped the scepter in his hand. This is his first encounter with Dumbledore. Magic enchantment, in simple terms, is a large-scale magic that mixes metamorphosis, protection magic and contract magic. After Artel obtained the Ring of Air, his talents and accomplishments in polymorphism and protection magic have reached the top level in the world. Only the foundation of contract magic is less. 563, but with the huge magic power provided by the Ring of Air for Artel, it is enough to break Dumbledore's magical barrier. Artel's magic power poured out along the scepter and spread to Dumbledore's magic enchantment. Soon, Artel analyzed the core of Dumbledore's magic, and then completely destroyed it through the law of transfiguration. Bang! The sound of broken glass spread far, and Artel opened his eyes. This magical barrier outside the Forbidden Forest was completely destroyed by him. The moment Artel destroyed the barrier, Dumbledore, who was far away in Nurmengard, shuddered violently, and his originally peaceful and warm gaze became sharp. Glancing at the old friend across the table, Dumbledore smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, something urgent happened and I'm leaving. I'm already very happy today. It's rare that you still remember me, an old guy. Go do your thing. Grindelwald smiled gracefully and put down the cutlery in his hand. Dumbledore didn't say anything, just nodded, then stood up, walked out of the room, looked back at Grindelwald, and cast an apparition to leave Nurmengard. Grindelwald walked out of the room, looked at the stars in the sky, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Big change. The big change I've been waiting for is coming soon. Deep in the Forbidden Forest, Artel walked slowly, like an old man, leaving a trail of footprints of varying shades on the smooth snow. It seems that since being attacked by Aurors, Shiluo has completely stopped. Looking at the sparse spider webs around, Artel sighed silently. The power he can use is still too little, and there are too many people in the wizarding world. If nothing else, the power of a London Ministry of Magic is enough for Artel. When I gather the 9 ring spirits, the giant dragon, the flame demon, and the 5,000 strong orcs. Artel muttered and came to Shiloh's lair. After waiting for a while, Artel spoke slowly, and the old voice spread throughout the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Shelob, an old friend is here, why don't you come and meet? Before long, a rustling sound came from the entrance of the underground lair, and then, Shiloh's huge body appeared in front of Artel. You are Saruman. How did you know I was here? Shiluo's 8 huge eyes looked at Artel, and his tone was a little excited and a little suspicious. The spider's sense of smell is not very keen. The last time it was able to detect Dumbledore was by the side, because he encountered Shi Luo's spider web when he moved. So although Shi Luo sensed that the smell of Saruman in front of him was a little off, he didn't think much about it. After all, the last time he saw Saruman was many years ago, and his memory was blurred for so long. Saruman was the first group of Maya to come to Middle-earth, and he was the leader of the Maya. Naturally, Shiloh had heard of his name. In fact, the two had nothing to do with each other. After Lune, he personally went to Chili's Angu and exchanged a few drops of blood and venom with a few elves and Shiloh. The purpose is naturally to carry out the strong orc experiment. I'm glad you still know me, Shalab. I'm a wise man after all, and I possess the spar of true knowledge, omniscient. Artel looked at Shalab. His legs were discounted by the Aurors, and he still hasn't recovered. He has also lost a few eyes, but he is in the recovery stage, but in general, his condition is not very good. Looks like you haven't had a good time lately. There are a lot of great mayors here. Shi Luo was noncommittal, and turned to Artel to talk about the situation of the Forbidden Forest, and then inquired about the information to Artel. The last time I met a Maya, he said his name was Dumbledore, and he was very powerful. Do you know him? I know him, he's a powerful human wizard, but he's not Maya. Maya is a demigod, an immortal, and although Dumbledore is one of the greatest wizards in the Harry Potter world, his level is indeed not enough. It's hard to imagine that there are such powerful humans. Shiluo sighed, not knowing why, feeling a little uneasy. After thinking about it, it asked again. Then, great wise man, Saruman the White Robe, why did you come to see me? Naturally, it's to understand some things, Shalab. I think you should also know that this world has become different, and this is not the stable Chili's Yugo. If you want to live well, you need a reliable partner. Artel's old voice was filled with magic. He smiled and said to Shiloh. Tell me, Shalab, how did you get here? Shiluo's spider legs trembled uncomfortably. It was silent for a while, and replied. I don't know what kind of great power that is. Sauron brought me a few orcs that day, although they were very hard to eat, but I was very hungry. Just when I was about to eat a big meal at that time, a great power that I could not describe descended upon Chili's and Go, and when I reacted, I was already here. That power can break through Soren's magic and bring me to this faraway place without my knowing it. I think that might be the power of Vera. In the world of the Lord of the Rings, Vala is a higher level existence than Maya, and Ungoliant, the mother of Shiloh, the Dark Weaver, is the evil spirit corrupted by Melkor, one of the Vala. And Sauron, the big boss in the Lord of the Rings, was actually a servant of Melkor when he was Maya. Artel didn't speak. He was still thinking. Shi Luo was summoned by the system. According to its words, it could perceive that a powerful force had moved it here, but it obviously did not realize that this was another world. Then do you remember the exact date of that day? Date? Shi Luo's voice was a little surprised, and there was a dry laugh in its body. I only know that it is the Third Era. As for time, this kind of thing has no meaning to those of us who have endless lives. Artel was at a loss for words, but he understood that there was nothing wrong with Shi Luo's words. An immortal creature, after going through long and endless years, doesn't care what year and month it is today. Let's wait until other intelligent creatures are summoned in the future. Giant Rafter, Golem, and Trolls are intelligent creatures, but Artel doesn't want to go to them. Ent slept most of the time, and lived in Fagin Forest, no matter the date. Gulu is already crazy. Even if he is not crazy, he is hiding in the Misty Mountains alone, and living alone for 500 years, he must have no concept of time. As for the Trolls, not to mention that. I need to determine the timeline of the Lord of the Rings world so that I can better deal with the intelligent creatures that will be summoned in the future. After all, the Lord of the Rings is now in my hands. Without the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring would not be formed, and Gandalf would not have known that Saruman had betrayed them, and would not even change. Become a white rogue, the follow-up Lord of the Rings war will not happen. What the system does is obviously to promote the fusion of the two real worlds, if the timeline that summons him is before this. The Lord of the Rings may even start in the world of Harry Potter. Countless thoughts flashed through Artel's mind. He raised his head, looked at Shi Luo, and said, Since this is the case, then there is no problem. This place is very suitable for you. You can stay here with peace of mind. remember not to provoke those human wizards, I will come back to you when you need it. Artel said, raising his scepter. Rebirth from a broken limb. The healing magic was poured out, and Shiluo's eyes suddenly burst into a black light, and it shook its spider legs excitedly, welcoming the baptism of magic. Magic from Saruman's experimental notes, reborn from a severed limb. Soon, under the magical power of Artel, Shiluo's broken leg grew back, and the blind eye quickly regained his sight. Go away, old man. Shiluo didn't speak, stared at Artel's back for a few times, and then slowly retreated into the lair. Artel left the depths of the Forbidden Forest, and when he reached the entrance of the Forbidden Forest, he stopped and turned his head to look at the empty snow on the right. Headmaster Dumbledore, since you're here, let's chat. As soon as Artel's voice fell, there was a drifting sigh from the snow. Dumbledore's figure slowly appeared and landed on the soft snow. He looked at Saruman, and there were waves under his eyes full of wisdom. Artel, no, it should be said that Saruman's image is indeed in line with his title of wise man. Wearing a white robe, holding a scepter, with white hair and gray beard, his majestic and wise eyes are daunting. Dumbledore just glanced at it, and completely treated Saruman as a wizard of the same level. What's more, as a master of legilimency, when facing Saruman, Dumbledore couldn't detect any thoughts or emotions, he could only feel the vast realm of the other party like a ship in the sky. Of course, this was the illusion that the Lord of the Rings gave him. Artel couldn't let Dumbledore see a shadow of Artel in him, so he took into account all aspects, in terms of mental mood and temperament, and used the power of the Lord of the Rings. Saruman. Artel turned slowly, facing Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore responded formally. In fact, he had come a long time ago. After Artel destroyed the barrier, Dumbledore came to the outside of the Forbidden Forest through apparition. Artel was sensing Dumbledore's position before calling Shiluo out. After discovering that he was in the Forbidden Forest, Artel called Shiluo out. The purpose is naturally to let Dumbledore understand that Shiluo was not brought into the Forbidden Forest by the Holy White Council represented by Saruman. I actually wanted to meet for a long time, to see you, after you, get the approval of Qilin. Artel spoke slowly, and Dumbledore heard the words, his eyes dazed for a moment, as if he was caught in some kind of memory. That's what happened before his final battle with Grindelwald. It is rumored in the magic world that the unicorn can perceive the pure kindness in people's hearts, and melt down to the pure and good person. The wizard who is recognized by the unicorn will become the leader of the magic world. Grindelwald secretly robbed a unicorn in order to win the election of the wizarding world and cast spells on it. As a result, on the day of the election ceremony, Newt and others brought another unicorn, and that unicorn chose Dumbledore. Story from Fantastic Beasts 3 Dumbledore Mystery. A wizard recognized by the unicorn is qualified to be a wise man. But unfortunately, something happened later, which caused the meeting between us to be delayed until today. Artel looked at Dumbledore in deep thought and interrupted his recollection. Dumbledore stared at Artel, and for some reason, in the presence of Saruman, Dumbledore felt that he had lost the feeling of being in control of everything he used to be. Because this guy represents too many secrets that he doesn't know. Dumbledore listened to the conversation between Artel and Shiloh just now, but he didn't have any clues about many things. Maya, Vera, Oak. Eternal life. These words were pulling on Dumbledore's nerves. He calmed down and returned to his old-fashioned appearance. He opened the mouth and said, Saruman, sir, I thought, maybe we could go to my office and have tea and chat. Right in the castle over there, I do have a lot to ask you about. You want to ask about Christmas Eve? Or about Shelob? Or about the Hobbit? Artel won't go to tea with Dumbledore. He is now using transfiguration to maintain himself. Although his transfiguration attainments are higher than Dumbledore's, the other party is also a transfiguration master after all. It is difficult for Artel to guarantee that he will be close. He will not be detected by him when they are in contact with each other. You don't need to drink tea, I still have some things to do. Artel rejected Dumbledore, paused, and his voice changed. However, I'm here to do two things, and if you can help me, I can tell you the answers to some questions. Dumbledore did not hesitate and replied, if you need help with anything, I think I'll be happy. I read in the Daily Prophet that you professed a magic called the Aria of Light, and the master who created this magic, Gandalf, is my friend, and I want to know his whereabouts." A strange look flashed in Artel's eyes, and he began to set up a character for Gandalf. "Your friend?" Dumbledore suppressed the surprise in his heart, thought about it, and asked. "But as far as I know, Gandalf was at least 1,000 years old." Thousands of years ago. He really disappeared for thousands of years. As if recalling something, Artel sighed with infinite emotion. "I want to applaud my acting." Artel thought so, then glanced apologetically at Dumbledore. "I'm sorry, I thought of something from the past. It was a long, long time ago, and the concept of time has lost its meaning." "I think you heard what Shelob said just now. Yes, Gandalf is also a Maya, an immortal existence. He just disappeared, and your spell is the only he has something to do with it." Dumbledore listened, and a storm surged in his heart. For the first time, the 110-year-old had doubts about the authenticity of this world. When Saruman on the opposite side said these words, there was no mental fluctuation in the slightest. Dumbledore didn't know whether the other party was also a legilimency master who had practiced occlumency, but he didn't know why. Dumbledore was willing to believe it. "I'm sorry, if that's the case, I can't help you, and I also accidentally got a volume from Mr. Gandalf's diary before I got that powerful magic," Dumbledore said with regret. Digesting this shocking news, Dumbledore was also looking for answers to other questions. "Then, can you show me the diary?" Artel took the initiative to speak. "Sure." Dumbledore took out the parchment from his arms and controlled it to fly in front of Artel. Artel glanced at the content on the parchment as if he had seen an old friend. "Parchment from the Glen, where fairies and elves dwell." Artel returned the parchment to Dumbledore, his face changing. "The record above is the events of the Third Era. It should be the Fellowship of the Ring. At that time, this matter. Forget it, it has already passed." Although they failed in the end, they still brought hope for peace. Sauron has been silent for 10,000 years, and the news of the Supreme Lord of the Rings reappears. "I think that this world will soon be in peace, and the Demon King who has been sleeping for 10,000 years is about to recover. I have to find Gandalf as soon as possible." Artel seemed to be talking to himself, and after a while, he came to his senses and said to Dumbledore. "Headmaster Dumbledore, I know that you are well known in the wizarding world, so can I ask you to help me to find Gandalf? Or find some clues about him?" "I will." Dumbledore nodded, hesitated, and asked. "Mr. Saruman, the one you just said, Sauron, I want to know who he is." Hooked. Artel pretended to hesitate, and after a moment of deliberation, he said. "These news should not have been known to you, but now the members of the Holy White Council are withered, and many people are missing. Since you have the potential to become a wise man, it is harmless to tell you. Sauron is a shadow that devours light, an undead demon king. His eyes are fixed on the doomsday volcano of Mordor, which has not changed in 10,000 years. The Lord of the Rings was created by Sauron. Once Sauron regains the Lord of the Rings, darkness will sweep the entire world, and at that time, both the wizarding world and the so-called Muggle world will be wiped out." Seeing Dumbledore's worried and inexplicable look, Artel decided to add some fire. "Aren't you curious about Gandalf's way of recording? The Third Era. Strictly speaking, it should be the Fourth Era. Each new era represents the dissipation of the old civilization, and the civilizations of the first three eras were all created by Sauron. Destroy. And now, the shadow of Mordor has revived, and Sauron will reappear before the eyes of the world." After Artel spoke for a long time, Dumbledore was unable to react. In addition to shocking him, Artel's words also had a hint of outrage and fear. If the other party is not a powerful wizard, not a powerful wizard who looks full of wisdom and makes people inexplicably close, Dumbledore must think that he is telling a story to himself. The devil who destroys civilization. All Dumbledore has been thinking about all these years is to stop a Voldemort who thinks pure blood is supreme. What is Voldemort in this comparison? Dumbledore opened his mouth, his face changed several times, and finally asked. "Is what you said true?" Artel looked at Dumbledore seriously and said slowly. "Of course, I don't have to lie to you. The records of the last era have been destroyed, except for us old guys. Almost no one knows the name of Sauron, but the hobbit I want to be captured, you should read his memory. Those are the memory fragments brought to him by the Lord of the Rings. Many of them are from the last era, They are all real, and the ent I brought yesterday, he is a civilized creature of the last era, and his appearance, it means the end of the era has come. One day, Mount Mordor will come again. Dumbledore stopped talking. He remembered the memory he read in Gollum's mind, and believed Artel's words a little more. Then I think, you know about trolls, don't you? Of course, it is also a creature from the Third Era, a group of savage and vulgar creatures. That thing was rampant in the Third Era, and there were many different ethnic groups. Artel glanced at the sky and felt that today's conversation was almost over. I think it's time for me to leave. I'll leave you with Gandalf, and to thank you for your help, I can give you a message. Artel pointed to Hogwarts castle not far away. In that castle, there was a guy with a few rags wrapped around his head, and behind his head there was a soul as good as him, very weak and a little evil. I think you should be interested. Also, there's a mouse in the castle, you can go and see it. Seeing Dumbledore looking at him curiously, Artel smiled and disappeared, leaving only this sentence in the air. Don't underestimate the power of the wise. Dumbledore was silent for a while before turning around and walking towards Hogwarts castle. He had some guesses about what Artel was talking about the weak soul, but who was a mouse referring to? Could it be the second force that has been hiding in the castle? A wise man. Dumbledore gave a wry smile. When he was talking to others, he usually half-covered it. He never made it clear. While letting the other party gain something, he independently explored the so-called truth. Now he himself can be considered a taste too great. In fact, Dumbledore didn't think that the mouse that Artel was talking about was really a mouse. Back at the Swiss hotel, Artel sighed in relief as he leaned back on the soft sofa. Dumbledore brought him a bit of a sense of oppression, especially Dumbledore subconsciously regarded Saruman, who had changed from Artel, as a wizard of the same level, so he treated him with the power of the momentum and the state of the students when he was the headmaster. Completely different. In general, the performance is still good. I think Dumbledore has now believed in the story I weaved for the wizarding world. Next, it depends on how the story ferments. Artel is looking forward to the higher the world acceptance of the main characters of The Lord of the Rings, the greater the probability of important characters appearing when he summons the characters, and he can summon the main characters as soon as possible to complete his plan. In addition, Dumbledore still has many questions that have not been answered, but in this case, it can prompt him to act as soon as possible. The seeds have been planted, and the next thing is to wait for him to germinate. Artel sorted out what had happened recently, and after confirming that there was nothing missing, he took a shower, put on his pajamas and went to sleep. Artel fell asleep, but in Hogwarts castle, many people couldn't sleep. Harry was sneered at Snape's office. In addition to deducting 50 points from Harry's Academy Cup points, Snape also confiscated his invisibility cloak. In addition, Harry will be fined after school starts. Confinement, cleaning the prefect's bathroom for 3 consecutive days. In addition to this, the parchment he found in the forbidden area was also confiscated by Snape. Harry didn't know what was written on the parchment, and he glanced at it when he was interrupted by the howl of the forbidden book, but Harry was smart enough to guess that the parchment should be the same as what Hermione found. Parchment as a series. Harry knew that Professor McGonagall had awarded Hermione 20 minutes of bonus points for discovering the parchment, so he ventured to ask Snape if he also had bonus points. As a result, Snape sneered and kicked Harry out of the office. Snape wouldn't have let Harry go so easily if he hadn't studied the parchment carefully. Shortly after Harry left, Snape got the news that Dumbledore had returned to the castle. He thought about it, and took the parchment and came to Dumbledore's office. Principal. After Snape met Dumbledore, he told Dumbledore what had happened tonight. When Dumbledore heard that Snape had confiscated Harry's invisibility cloak, Dumbledore's mouth twitched a few times. I only gave the invisibility cloak to Harry this morning, and it was confiscated at night because of the night tour. Such a good boy. Dumbledore felt a tightness in his chest, which was too hard for a centenarian. When he heard that Harry had found the second parchment in the forbidden area, Dumbledore's expression changed again. He took the parchment from Snape and read it carefully. The parchment records the events of the Fellowship of the Ring. Dumbledore had just learned of this group at Artel tonight, which, of course, he called the Fellowship of the Ring. Severus, a very interesting thing is that I just got a piece of information on the parchment from another person tonight. Dumbledore told Snape what happened on Christmas Eve at the Ministry of Magic and what happened tonight in the Forbidden Forest. After a long time, after making sure that Snape had digested all the information he had just said, Dumbledore asked, "What do you think about this? Do you suspect that the man named Saruman has something to do with this suddenly appearing parchment?" Snape was also a little skeptical. It's all too coincidental, or rather, this parchment appears too coincidentally. Either way, there is a conspiracy. It was as if the man named Saruman had put it into the castle himself. But what was he doing this for? And how was he sure that Harry was going to the night tour, and how was he going to be sure that Harry was going to the forbidden area? Snape didn't understand, and neither did Dumbledore. Therefore, they are still more willing to believe that this is a coincidence. If there is no relationship between the two, and they corroborate each other, then basically what he said is true. If the parchment is indeed made by Saruman, then we have to consider Saruman making up the story. What is the purpose? Dumbledore pondered. He looked towards the Forbidden Forest, thinking of Saruman and Shelob when they were talking, thinking of the pictures he saw in the depths of Gollum's memory. His heart is more inclined to the first answer, but the truth still needs them to dig and find more clues. Seeing that Dumbledore seemed to have an idea, Snape asked, "What should we do? Let's contact the members of the Order of the Phoenix first, and tell them about this. Perhaps, the goal of the Order of the Phoenix will be to prevent the Dark Lord from recovering." Dumbledore said half-jokingly, and then his tone became serious. "We need more evidence. If this matter is true, then the matter of Voldemort is not a big deal. In addition, we need to find someone to check the matter of the Holy White Council again. Saruman's words cannot be completely letter. I always feel that he is hiding something, but I think we will meet again in the future. Other things, try to find more parchment, ask Mrs. Pins to check the Forbidden Book area again, and then pay more attention to other families' collections, old books, and see if you can find any clues." Dumbledore ordered, thinking about Quirrell again. "As for Quirrell, leave it to me. I plan to use him for one thing. As for the other mouse Saruman mentioned, I will try my best to find it." Dumbledore still intends to carry out his own plan to use Quirrell to help Harry Potter grow. Dumbledore believed that the boy who was regarded as the savior in the prophecy would do a lot in the future. Maybe when Harry grew up, he would be able to solve the demon king named Sauron. Snape left the headmaster's office with a heavy heart, and Dumbledore looked at the parchment on the table and fell into contemplation again. The Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, Baggins. According to Saruman's words, they failed in the end. Since they failed, why did Sauron sleep for 1,000 years, and where did the Lord of the Rings go? Why did it suddenly appear in Gulu's hand, and finally was stolen by which Baggins? Gone. What role does the Holy White Council play here? Is Saruman good or bad? Are you saying that everything is a hoax? Dumbledore only felt that his thoughts were getting more and more confused. He walked to the pensieve in the corner of the office, pressed his wand against his temple, and took out several thoughts from his mind and sank into the bottom of the basin. After doing this, Dumbledore looked relieved. No matter what, there is always time. Let's settle Quirrell's business first. The next day, Artel, who seemed to be fine, had a good day in Switzerland. In the evening, he went to the Swiss Ministry of Magic and bought a Daily Prophet. Unsurprisingly, the headline was the attack on the Ministry of Magic in London on Christmas Eve. The largest page published a photo of Umbridge, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Magic in London, standing in front of the camera, making a gesture of no photography, and the photo still clearly captured the appearance of the Hall of the Ministry of Magic. There are also some smaller photos below this photo, including a close-up of the giant rafters, a close-up of the line on the Brothers of Magic sculpture, and a close-up of Dumbledore's appearance at the Ministry of Magic. Rita is worthy of being a journalist that Artel likes. Her article is gorgeous in words and exaggerated in writing, combining facts and speculations, combining on-the-spot reports and insiders' revelations, and some nonsense. All in all, the whole thing was perfectly, even exaggeratedly moved to the eyes of all the wizards in the entire wizarding world. Everyone knows that the Ministry of Magic in London was attacked on Christmas Eve by a giant cauldron brought by a wizard named Saruman from the Holy White Council. The great Dumbledore himself admitted that he was inferior to Saruman. In a small corner of the newspaper, there was also a manifesto from the Ministry of Magic in London. It probably means that the initiator Saruman will be arrested and judged, and he will be imprisoned in Azkaban, making him pay the due price Li Wangchao, etc., and offering a reward to the entire wizarding world. Any wizard only needs to provide Saruman-related information. Clues: you will get a bounty reward of 1,000 golden galleons. This day is regarded as a day of shame for the Ministry of Magic in London. With the fermentation of the Daily Prophet, the wizarding world boiled. The name Saruman spread throughout the entire magic world, and shocked the entire magic world. Some people even link the Holy White Council with the Death Eater group. After reading the entire Daily Prophet, Artel sneered and put the newspaper on the table next to him. Sophia glanced curiously, but didn't find anything abnormal. She rubbed her eyes, and she swore that she had indeed seen the person in the photo in the newspaper move. Could it be that I stayed up late last night so I had hallucinations? Sophia murmured, put the hot milk on the table beside Artel, and left with a weird expression. The next day, after breakfast at the hotel, the Shelbys took a special plane to return to Birmingham. At noon, Artel returned to Shelby Manor. After having lunch and changing into clean clothes, Artel took Jimmy's car and drove to Manchester. He was going to invite the Hermione family to the party the Shelby family prepared on New Year's Day. As the world's first industrialized city, the liveliness of Manchester is naturally different. Although 2 days have passed since Christmas, the pungent smell of fireworks still lingers in the air of Manchester after several nights of carnival. At Granger's dentist's office not far from the city center, Hermione was bored lying on her bed reading a book. She was wearing a small Scottish-style skirt and pure white cotton socks on her feet. She was lying on the bed, her 2 calves raised back and dangling in the air. Humph, nasty Artel, we're back today. The book in front of Hermione is called The List of Famous Magicians of Our Time, but Hermione's mind is obviously not in this book. On the page she is looking at, there is a single photo sent back by Artel. Humph, it's already afternoon. Hate. Hermione glanced at the time and couldn't help muttering. Ding dong. The doorbell rang outside, and Hermione sat up with a squeak. She has repeated this action many times because several parents brought their children to see the teeth this morning, and their children ate too much candy for Christmas and were unable to eat due to toothache. No one's child. As soon as such a thought popped into Hermione's mind, she heard a familiar voice. Uncle Granger, Aunt Granger, good afternoon. It's Artel. Hermione screamed. She quickly jumped off the bed, closed her book, ran to the full-length mirror to have a look, smoothed the wrinkles on her skirt, and ran out quickly. Artel and the Grangers said hello, and as soon as they entered the house, they heard a bang, and then saw Hermione rushing out of the room. Hi, Hermione, Merry Christmas. Artel greeted her with a smile. I haven't seen her for a few days, and it feels like Hermione is a little prettier. Humph, I thought you weren't coming. Hermione snorted softly, glanced at her mother secretly, then quickly ran to Artel's side and whispered. Come and see the Christmas present I prepared for you. Artel smiled embarrassedly at the Grangers, who looked at each other and responded with a smile, saying it was okay, so Artel followed Hermione to her bedroom. As for the invitation letter, I'll leave it to Jimmy. Hermione's bedroom is full of books and textbooks. Although there are not dolls and beautiful clothes everywhere like other girls, the main color is still lovely pink, from which you can feel the vitality and breath of a girl. Hermione pulled Artel to sit next to the bed, then mysteriously opened the bedside cabinet. Hey, this is my Christmas present for you. Don't dislike it. Hermione's face turned red as she spoke, like a ripe apple. Artel took the gift curiously and opened the beautifully packaged box. Inside is a light brown wool knitted scarf. You knitted this yourself. Artel took out the scarf and sniffed it. Well, I learned from my mother. Hermione gave a faint hum. Seeing Artel's movements, she showed a shy expression, stomped her feet, and pushed Artel. You, what are you doing? Cough cough. The first time Artel saw Hermione like this, it felt a little magical. Hermione was so charming at the age of 12. To know that in the next few years, Hermione was more beautiful every year. I like it, thank you. Artel put the scarf on, and it felt quite comfortable. The key point was that Hermione made it herself, which made him very satisfied. Take it off first, you are not too hot. Hermione rolled her eyes at Artel, helped him take off the scarf, folded it and put it in the box, then remembered something, and took out the pocket watch gift box Artel had given her from under the pillow. I can ask for this gift, it's too expensive, Hermione whispered, trying to put the gift box in Artel's hand. Artel didn't answer. He smiled and stroked Hermione's hair. Preciousness is relative. To others, this pocket watch may be very precious, but to me, it is not as good as your smile. Hermione froze there, not speaking. She's never heard that. Such goofy words. Is this a confession? Hermione stared blankly at Artel. Artel's heart skipped a beat, feeling a little bad. I subconsciously took out the trick of teasing little girls in my previous life. Now it's 1991. Hermione, a 12-year-old girl, can't bear this. Me, Hermione, after a long while, finally shook my head. No, it's pure gold, it's really too precious. If my mother found out, she would kill me. Artel thought about it and got an idea. Well, let's make a bet. Years. What bet? Don't you want to be a guest at my house on New Year's Day? I will hide it in the yard of my house at that time. If you can find me within 10 minutes, I will take back this gift. If you can't find it, then stay at ease. How? Hermione looked at Artel suspiciously and calculated. For 10 minutes, hide in the yard. How can I not find it myself? Then it's settled. Hermione agreed. Wasn't she just keeping it for 3 or 4 days? No problem. After solving this matter, the atmosphere between the two became a little awkward. Hermione didn't dare to look up at Artel, and Artel felt a little embarrassed, but Mrs. Granger's voice came from outside. Artel, Hermione, come out and eat some fruit. The two were relieved to hear Mrs. Granger calling them out. It's just that Hermione's face was still very red, and she was too embarrassed to go out, so she let Artel go first. After afternoon tea at Hermione's house, Artel and Jimmy left Manchester, and before leaving, Jimmy handed 3 elaborate invitations to the Grangers. It has the full address of Shelby Manor and the time and precautions when the party starts. In the evening, Artel returned to Shelby Manor. His room was piled with a pile of Christmas presents. Artel picked out the ones from Hogwarts from CGEB and checked them out. First there were candies from Harry and Ron, some small wizard toys from Neville, and then some collectible souvenirs from Malfoy and his 3 little Death Eaters. To Artel's surprise, Pansy Parkinson also sent a gift, a delicate wizard robe. Artel's mouth twitched, because he did not prepare a gift for this little fool. This is. Artel turned to look at another package, the pink one, and the package was exquisite, and it was obvious that he had put his mind to it. Lavender brown. Isn't that Hermione's scheming roommate? I've never spoken to her, and she's actually giving me a present. Artel unpacked and burst out laughing. There is also a wizard robe inside. It seems that she and Pansy have similar views, and the gifts they choose are the same. Artel threw the wizard's robes aside and looked at the other Christmas gifts. Basically every professor of Artel at Hogwarts gave him gifts, not even Snape. Snape gave him a self-stirring cauldron, and Professor Flitwick gave him a book of Wizarding Battles tips notes. Among them, the gifts from Headmaster Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall were the most attentive. Dumbledore gave the notes he recorded when he was studying Transfiguration in his early years, while Professor McGonagall gave a best-selling storybook in the wizarding world. It's about a wizard who is on the verge of falling back to embrace the light. Looks like Professor McGonagall is worried that I'm going to go bad. Artel smiled and packed up all the gifts and put them away. As for the gifts from those in the Muggle world, Artel didn't have the time to look at them. Anyway, it's almost the same every year, either the latest toys, firearms, weapons or gold products. For the next 2 days, Artel resumed his normal life. Every day he would go to the underground laboratory in Shelby Manor to refine the potions. With the automatic stirring crucible sent by Professor Snape, Artel could now refine 2 bottles of potions at a time. In this way, the time came to December 31st. That night, Artel's summoning authority was renewed again. Ding! Congratulations to the host, Saruman's world acceptance has reached the standard. Ding! The mall opens the main character, Saruman's redemption permission. Monthly summons, Saruman's permission unlocked. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the sideline Legend of Saruman and getting plot points x 1000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting the item reward Saruman's experiment notes 2. A series of system prompts sounded in Artel's mind. Artel was a little surprised. He didn't expect that there would be such a reward for completing the world acceptance of the main character. This is also a surprise. Artel took a deep breath. The last time he summoned him, he obtained the Ring of Chi, Via, and he didn't know if this time would continue the good luck of the last time. Summon the Lord of the Rings item. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Alyssa Jewel. The Jewel of Alyssa. Alyssa as a gem is green as a leaf, set on an eagle-shaped brooch made of mithril, and the same light is sealed in it. This gem has the power to heal everything and restore the withered to its original state, to bring the aged back to youth. Note 1. The Elisar gem is a dowry given to Aragon by the Princess Owl of the Glen. Note 2. The person who holds the gem can heal the wounds of all things through the touch of both hands. Note 3. Whoever collects 2 Elisar gems will have endless lives. A silver eagle brooch appeared in Artel's hand, and above the brooch, an aquamarine gem was shining brightly. Looking at the system's 3 notes, Artel fell into contemplation. Obviously, the system is telling him that this gem has very powerful power and the power to heal everything, but getting this gem also means offending Arwen and Aragorn. One is the king of Gondor, and the other is the elf princess of the valley. Of course, Artel is not afraid. He is destined to kill Sauron and become the man of the devil. Sauron is not afraid of it, and is he afraid of Aragorn and the elves? Good stuff, keep it. Artel looked at the gem in his hand with satisfaction, and chose to accept it. Having this gem is equivalent to having a wizard who is proficient in various advanced healing magic by his side, and it can also be used as a dowry in the future. Not bad. Summon the Lord of the Rings characters. After putting away the Elissa gem, Artel struck while the iron was hot and chose a character to summon. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully summoning Dulin's nemesis. The unlocking degree of the Supreme Lord of the Rings has increased by 1%. The system's voice sounded in Artel's mind, and his brows were raised slightly, revealing a look of surprise. The unlocking degree has been increased by 1%. It seems that the nemesis of Durin should be similar to Shelob. It has nothing to do with the Lord of the Rings, but has something to do with the Fellowship of the Ring. Sure enough, when Artel opened the system space and saw the sleeping big man in the space, he suddenly realized. It was it. In Artel's system space, a huge Balrog was asleep, with 2 demon horns growing on its head, and its whole body was burning with crimson fire, exuding a billowing demonic energy. Balrog, Durin's nemesis. The Balrog was originally a member of the Maya, but was corrupted by Morgoth and turned into the Balrog. After the defeat of the War of Wrath in the First Era, Durin's nemesis fled to the bottom of the Misty Mountains and fell into a deep sleep. Until the Third Era, it was awakened by the dwarves who went deep into the ground to mine mithril. The awakened Balrog started a killing spree, killed a lot of dwarves, and killed the then dwarf King Dulin VI. In the second year he also killed the successor king, the son of Durin V. That's why it is called the nemesis of Durin. He has been entrenched in the underground of Moria. The dwarves have tried many times to subdue Moria, but they have failed. Until the arrival of the Fellowship of the Ring, Durin's nemesis and Gandalf the Grey perished. That's why Gandalf the White Robe came back to life. I didn't expect to actually pull it out. The first parchment made by Artel introduced the Balrog in detail, but he did not know his name at that time, and it was also to elicit the aria of light that can heal all dark magic. Now that the Balrog has been summoned, the first parchment will no longer have any loopholes. Since Dumbledore had never seen the Balrog, Artel let him see it. But it's not okay to drop the Balrog directly near Hogwarts. Artel pondered. There are many little wizards in Hogwarts. Once the Balrog is thrown into the past, it will inevitably cause a lot of casualties. Artel is not so mad. After all, this Balrog is an existence that can perish with Gandalf. Although it is Gandalf in the Grey Robe period, don't forget that Gandalf the Grey has the Ring of Fire, one of the 3 rings of the elf. Combined with the power of the Ring of Air, Artel guess Gandalf is no weaker than Dumbledore. Even stronger in some respects. After all, Gandalf was a melee mage. In this case, you can't put it in a crowded place. Artel thought for a while, and suddenly remembered that Dumbledore had said in his office with Professor McGonagall and Professor Snape that Newt Scamander would go to a tropical rainforest in order to find out the origin of the trolls. Explore. This may be an opportunity. Artel took out the Iselspar, and as his thoughts moved, Newt's figure appeared on it. At this time, Newt was walking on a grassland, and there were several venomous leopards not far away from him. Artel found out the book, Where Are the Fantastic Beasts, and checked the book and found that the venomous leopard is a unique magical animal in East Africa. East Africa, he should be going to the rainforest of the Congo River Basin. Artel has a guess in his heart that the tropical rainforest in the Congo River Basin is the second largest tropical rainforest in the world, but because of the particularity of Africa, the magical animals hidden in this tropical rainforest are several times that of the Amazon rainforest. No wonder Newt wanted to go there to find clues about William. Place Durin's nemesis in the undercurrent channel of the Congo Basin. Although the Balrog is a fire-type demon, it does not have high requirements on the living environment, and does not necessarily have to live in a volcano or a desert. Durin's nemesis has lived in Moria for thousands of years. That place is a large underground mine with countless underground rivers, so there is no problem in sending it to the Congo Basin. However, the sudden change of living environment may make it go crazy for a while, but it doesn't matter, it can attract Newt to it. Newt is also the main hero of the series anyway, so he shouldn't click on his back and be killed by the Balrog. Artel thought for a while, Newt's strength and luck seemed to be quite strong, and this shouldn't happen. When Newt discovered the Balrog and knew that he was not an opponent, he would definitely seek Dumbledore's help. As for whether Dumbledore and the others would kill the Balrog, Artel felt that it was enough. In any case, the Balrog is also Maya, an immortal existence. Unless Dumbledore and other wizards die, then it is possible to perish with the Balrog. Otherwise, even if Dumbledore gathered enough people, he would at most hurt the Balrog, and then trap it underground and couldn't escape. And when Artel unlocks the ability of the Supreme Lord of the Rings later, he can completely control the Balrog and make it his subordinate. Soon, the system successfully dropped Durin's nemesis into the underground of the Congo Basin. A picture about the Balrog was put on the Isle spar. Similar to what he had guessed, the living environment suddenly changed, and the flame demon seemed very manic. It ran wildly in the underground river for a long time, and finally found an underground passage that had been diverted and dried up for many years, and then left no traces around. After less magic enchantment and marking, he fell into a deep sleep again. After some tossing just now, the flow of a certain section of the Congo Basin plummeted, and all the nearby plants died inexplicably. This change is enough to attract Newt's attention. Putting away the Isle spar, Artel put the Balrog thing behind him, and took out the Saruman's experiment notes too, that was rewarded by the system to start researching. Different from the first experiment notebook, the magic and potions in this experiment notebook are much more advanced, and most of them are related to the soul and spirit level. After simply flipping through it, Artel's expression became odd. If Voldemort sees this, tisk. The notes recorded a special magic potion that could nourish and strengthen the soul, making it more suitable than the Philosopher's Stone for Voldemort in the Horcrux state in the shortest possible time. Artel closed the note and placed it in the system space. The things recorded above are good, but they will not help him much in a short period of time. Tonight is New Year's Eve. After the night falls, the whole Birmingham is once again enveloped by the festive atmosphere. The Shelby family threw a small house party. The members of the Shelby family gathered on the lawn of the estate to taste wine and barbecue, and the children set off fireworks not far away. The party lasted until 2 o'clock in the morning. After returning to the room with a tired face, Artel took a hot bath under Sophia's care, and then fell asleep. When I woke up again, it was 10 o'clock in the morning. In order to ensure the smooth progress of the New Year's Day party, the servants in the manor have been busy for a long time. They need to prepare wine, pastries and various ingredients in advance, and the party takes place on the lawn not far from the large swimming pool of Shelby Manor. The reason why he chose not far from the pool is because Jimmy also invited dozens of beautiful models and planned to hold a pool party by the way. Although Aunt Nancy was a little unhappy, she didn't say much. The guests invited today are all famous nobles, politicians, businessmen and gang leaders in Birmingham. In normal times, these people cannot get together. Happy New Year, Master. Sophia greeted Artel warmly. You too, Happy New Year, Sophia. Artel smiled, took out a big red envelope from the table beside and handed it to Sophia. It was her New Year's gift. Thank you, Master. Sophia smiled happily, but she didn't really care how much money she had. She lived in Shelby Manor and usually didn't spend a penny. After a simple shower, Artel put on his clothes. On this special day, the Shelby family suit must be arranged. After wearing Artel, standing in front of the full-length mirror, looking at himself in the mirror, he couldn't help but sigh, twice. He was only 11 years old and already possessed an irresistible charm. Lonely. After packing, Artel and Sophia left the room. After saying Happy New Year to everyone he met, Artel came to the restaurant for a quick bite and then got ready to welcome his guests. I told Hermione that my family is very big, I don't know if it will scare her. Sean, I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.